Episode number 451, Back to an Underground City. On the edge of the Uranus sector, there was a small city by the name of Saron City. It was a pretty average location with a population of less than 100,000, and the strongest warrior was the Wave Champion, who worked as the city protector. In the middle of the city was a massive hotel, mostly empty since Saron City was not a tourist place. However, an entire fortification lay beneath it, over 1,000 meters underground. It was not very large, less than 1/100th of the city, but it was not a problem since it was not a residence but one of the main secret forts of Dead Ocean. Over 100 Wave Champions and nearly 10 Wave Kings were in the fort. They were all drinking and eating, as it seemed like a party, but aside from the festive aura, they all exuded a potent killing aura. The reason for such an aura was that the group had just returned from an important mission, having assaulted a convoy, taking a massive amount of wealth, and killing hundreds of people.
Ha, I expected the mission to be hard, but it was a piece of cake. What could you expect? So many of us were called, so it made sense that we overwhelmed them. HMPH, I expected more of a fight, but they barely resisted.
The Wave Kings heard the chatter of the Wave Champions, but only smiled, as the battle had truly been an easy one.
By the way, when will the vice leader return? We have been waiting for several hours already.
Stay connected with Fruibnovel. One of the Wave Kings asked the others. They had agreed to return to this location after the mission was over to distribute the loot, but the vice leader who took command of this heist had not arrived yet.
She was wounded facing the convoy leader, and you know her paranoid personality. There is no way she would appear without first stabilizing her condition. Thinned.
A Wave King with golden spikes emerging from his back replied with a calm expression. Suddenly, he turned to the elevator that led to this place.
Oh, speaking of the devil, I am impressed she returned so fast.
The Wave King with golden spikes thought he would see the vice leader emerge from the elevator. Yet, once the elevator opened, the one inside was not their vice leader, but a man with a red mask and eyes burning with red light.
Oh, help.
Absolute and utter terror appeared in the eyes of the early Wave King with the golden spikes on his back as he looked around him, but there was only darkness and screams. What is that monster? That thought crossed the Atrox Wave King's mind, and he still remembered how everything went down. The man with the red mask appeared out of nowhere before a demonic draconic creature materialized on the ceiling, and a domain of darkness covered everything. As a Wave King, he did not need light to see, but the domain of darkness was so strong that it severed his sense of sight, and not even his ego wave could show him what was happening. The first thought on his mind was to escape, but while he was an astral Wave King and his punches could break mountains, the purpose of this underground fort was to resist high levels of destruction, so the only real way out was through the elevator.
Oh,
Even though he could not see, the man remembered the elevator's location and was ready to flash toward it, but it seemed that someone moved faster as he heard a cry of pain from that location. That was just the beginning, and the next second, waves of shadows blasted him against a wall, making him lose his sense of direction as more and more cries of pain echoed around.
oh, save me. New of.
Cries of pain echoed until suddenly there was no more sound, and the terror in the man's heart exploded. Fortunately, he did not endure such fear for long since a blade cut his head off the next second. After the death of the golden-spiked Atrox, the domain of darkness faded, revealing the figure of the Scarlet King in the middle of the underground city. His eyes wandered across the place and saw the bloodshed that could only be described as a massacre. With his current hypnotic abilities, it would have been easy for the Scarlet King to take control of the people in the room and kill them without the need for such bloodshed. There were two reasons for such a violent approach. First, the Scarlet King wanted to test his assassination skills, which was why, after unleashing the domain of darkness, he did not use a single iota of essence wave to enhance his power and killed everybody relying solely on his physical attributes. The second, and even more important reason was that he wanted to deliver a message to the person going down the elevator.
Thinned.
The sound of the elevator reaching its destination echoed, and the next second, the gates opened to reveal an Atrox woman. She had no bio-armor on her body and instead wore golden artifacts, but her beautiful face was visible. The woman had a charming smile, but it immediately froze as the gates opened, and all she saw were corpses, blood, and a man wielding a saber in the middle of it. Immediately, the intent to run appeared in her mind, and she was ready to blast through the elevator ceiling to escape. But a powerful red ego wave invaded her mind, generating immense pain. The next instant, the man appeared before her and grabbed her neck before beginning to squeeze it. The Scarlet King's ego wave burst with more and more strength into the woman's brain, trying to compel her. Doing hypnosis on a late wave king was incredibly complicated. It surpassed the current capabilities of the Scarlet King, which was why he presented the woman with such a gory scene, generating a breach in her mental defenses. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 452, Death-Tide I. The Atrox female was by no means weak, and she had seen a lot of death in her life, but such a gory scene and the wave of shock and surprise was too much. In the end, her mental defenses collapsed, and the Scarlet King managed to put her under hypnosis. It was feeble and would break at any second, but it would suffice. The Scarlet King's ego wave grew extremely fatigued due to the mental effort. Still, he achieved his goal and began interrogating the woman, asking all sorts of questions about Death Ocean.
Crack.
It took nearly half an hour to obtain all the information he wanted. After that, he broke the woman's neck, killing her before taking her space ring and sending her corpse into the demonic devourer dimension. His ego wave spread across the underground city, inspecting everybody's space rings, and then sending all the corpses and broken armor into the demonic devourer dimension. As if nothing had happened, the Scarlet King entered the elevator and pushed the button to return to the surface. Just as the gates were closing, he gave one last look at the underground fort, and memories emerged in his mind. The last time the Scarlet King was in an underground city, it took all his wits and effort to escape with his life, and there was only a Wave Champion in it. Now, he had the power to enter one full of Wave Champion and Wave King, leaving without a single wound on his body. How things have changed. No one saw him arrive or leave, and those who gazed their eyes on him were dead. A grand and luxurious ship was coursing through the silent forest on its way to Evernite. Although impressive in terms of speed, the vessel's main goal was its opulence, telling everybody just how wealthy its owner was.
It's a forehead.
At the helm of the giant ship was an obscenely fat man. He wore dark armor that glowed with a violet light, and his hands held all sorts of delicacies and drinks.
Who would have thought that some of the ancient clans of the capital would summon little old me? They must have recognized the genius of my management and want my advice.
Find exclusive stories on Freeweb Novel. The Atrox continued laughing as he kept gloating, seemingly not noticing the looks of disdain and disgust from the rest of the people on the ship.
Of course, Lord Unit, you have done a great job since your father fell sick from his war injuries. It is natural they want to know you better.
The one who played along with the fat Atrox was a beautiful young woman with a lovely smile. Although her behavior made it seem like she was infatuated with the man, anyone with a discerning gaze could see the hidden disgust in her eyes. Unit turned to the young woman and showed a self-satisfied smile, not bothering to hide his lust in the slightest.
Ha, you are right, Rallin. All my brothers look down on me, but they can do nothing since father put me in charge of the city and gave me control of our forces.
As Unit looked around the ship, he saw how everybody smiled at him and began to applaud his words, making his expression even more unpleasant. Although the people present were annoyed by the man's behavior, there was little they could do since they had to respect the city lord's desires. Feeling even better as he saw how everybody kept placating him, Unit turned to the young woman.
Rallin, how about if you dance for me? I am in the mood.
The young Atrox's smile nearly broke as she heard those words, but she did not dare to go against the man's words and nodded.
Rumbles.
However, just as she was about to begin, a powerful red force field fell onto the ship, encompassing every corner of it and its people. All the Atrox could not help but show fear and dread as they felt the overwhelming willpower in that red force field. They raised their eyes to the sky with terror and saw a man with a red mask accompanied by a demonic draconic being. Unit's face showed terror greater than any of the other Atrox, and it seemed he would soil himself at any second as he could not stop his body from trembling.
What do you think you are doing? I am Unit Karen, son of the City Lord of Karen City, an Apotheosis Realm Master.
As one would expect from a nobleman without any prospect or future, Unit immediately used the threat of his father's power to face the person in the sky. But this one just kept looking at him before softly shaking his head.
Do we really have to go through this charade? Dead Ocean's leader, Death Tide.
Rallin and the rest of the people on the ship did not understand what was happening or why that monster with the red mask called their useless lord by the name of Death Tide. However, the cowardly Unit stopped trembling the next second, and his eyes went from terror to calm. That was not the end of things, as Unit's figure also began to change, as the fat covering his figure faded, leaving only a perfectly balanced body and handsome face. But the most shocking part came next, as a burst of essence wave emerged from the man, rising beyond the level of a wave king. Unit's aura grew to the point that it was even mightier than the city lords, and a dark and ominous foss covered his body, which seemed to extinguish the life of anything it got in touch with. The Scarlet King stared at the man, but was not surprised by the transformation. Unit Karen was considered a spoiled son who got lucky enough to gain his father's favor, and was given control of Karen City after the city lord fell ill due to old wounds. What no one knew was that Unit was actually Death Tide, a powerful Apotheosis Realm Master, and it was he who weakened his father to obtain control of the city and expand his influence. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 453, Death Tide I. Unlike the leader of Dark Hand, Death Tide hid in the open by playing a fictitious persona of himself, a buffoon that no one respected. Since Unit was such an embarrassment and a weak coward, no one felt threatened by him. It was easy to handle the threats around you if people constantly underestimated you.
I must commend you for the performance. Had I not known about it, you could have tricked me.
Unit stared at the man in the sky for a moment before speaking.
Did Yetta betray me?
Death Tide had always been careful with his secret identity, and only one person knew his identity, the vice leader of Dead Ocean. He had already played enough tricks and mental games on the woman to make her want to kill herself before betraying him, which was why he was confident in his cover. Yet, the presence of the man with the red mask in the sky proved that the woman had revealed the information.
I extracted the information from her mind by force.
The Scarlet King could not help but grow interested in the man. Death Tide was 1,000 years old and by no means a talented person, but he achieved great things by taking advantage of his scheming mind. Urin nodded, and his eyes showed nothing, as he did not really care about the woman's life.
I felt a great power in you, but I am no weakling either. Is there a way we can handle this without a fight?
Experience new stories with Freeweb Novel. As he uttered those words, a dark force field emerged from Death Tide, slowly pushing back the Scarlet King's ego wave. Surprisingly, they were at about the same level, meaning that, at least in terms of ego wave, Death Tide surpassed the old Dark Mask. The Scarlet King was not surprised by the man's willpower. Being over 1,000 years old and playing a show every day of your life was not something one could do with weak resolve.
Even if I leave, what about all these people who saw you?
Death Tide showed a calm expression as he looked at the others, who were shocked and confused.
They are all my brother's spies. I just had them around to spread my disguise, but obviously now they are all as good as dead.
The Scarlet King softly nodded as he heard that, but his eyes burst with red light as his essence wave exploded with power when he took control of the life wave in the surroundings.
You are an interesting person, but I came here for a battle, and I will get one.
Urin's eyes grew cold as he heard that, and the next second he stomped into the ship's surface, generating a dark wave that spread in all directions. Dread and terror appeared in the dozens of people inside the ship as they saw their life force being drained out of their bodies and flooding into Death Tide. Some begged and cried, but Death Tide showed nothing as the energy kept filling his body. The Scarlet King's eyes narrowed as he saw the attack used by Death Tide. He did not care about the people on the ship, but it was the first time he saw such mighty law, and a solemn expression appeared on his face.
The law of death.
Regarding the power of a law, there were two key factors. One was the mastery over the law, as greater mastery allowed a cultivator to channel more of its power. The second factor was its impact on the universe, since the higher it was, the more powerful the law would be. Of course, that also meant it would be more challenging to master it. Death Tide's death law was still a basic understanding realm, but he could unleash an equally destructive power than the original Dark Mask, Ice Law. Just as the Scarlet King expected Death Tide to channel all the energy he took from the people on the ship as an attack against him, the man flashed into the lower levels. A slight frown appeared on the Scarlet King's face as he had already inspected the ship, and there was no teleportation formation or the like in the lower levels. Still, he did not hesitate before sending the demonic phantom forward. The avatar of darkness and blood lunged toward the ship, ready to break it to pieces and reach Death Tide. However, just as its claw reached the surface, it began to glow with all sorts of strange runes. The Scarlet King's eyes widened as he saw those runes, but they fulfilled their purpose before he could do anything. The Scarlet King had only used his ego wave to inspect the ship and not his pseudo-multidimensional scan force field, since the purpose of this fight was to take on someone he knew nothing about. That was why the runes were able to hide until the last minute. The explosion was so intense that it blasted the demonic phantom to pieces, sending the blood nails flying in different directions. The holy weapon would have broken into pieces had it not been for the Saint Revolution refinement. The Scarlet King extended his right hand, retrieving the blood nails and reforging the demonic phantom. Although he could conjure the avatar again, it forced him to drain a considerable amount of his essence wave and blood energy. His eyes narrowed as the ego wave inspected the cloud of flames left by the explosion, and a flash of surprise appeared on them as he failed to detect Death Tide. Immediately, the Scarlet King unleashed the full power of his ego wave, covering everything in a radius of over 300 kilometers, and he saw it. In the distance, a cocoon of life energy flashed away at an immense speed, and inside was none other than Death Tide.
So that is where the life of all those people went. He must have hidden in the ship's most reinforced place and used the people's life force as a ward before escaping into the distance.
The Scarlet King's grip over Slaughter tightened as he saw the figure running away, and a smile appeared on his face. This was the first time he met someone who truly used wits as a weapon, and there was a slight sense of danger assaulting him, making it clear that if he went off to Dark Tide, his life could be in danger.
Boom.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 454, Death Tide EI.
Boom.
A massive shockwave spread across the sky as the Scarlet King and the demonic phantom flashed off to Death Tide with surging power and killing intent. There was clear danger in chasing Death Tide, but if that was just all it took to make him give up, then what would the Scarlet King do when he faced the true power of Ether? Unit's eyes were sharp as he felt the presence of the Scarlet King and the demonic phantom coming closer and closer. He had a higher cultivation stage, but the Scarlet King's shadow constitution made his speed overwhelmingly high. However, just as the Scarlet King was about to reach striking distance from Death Tide, the latter fused into a massive mountain range, making the Scarlet King's eyes widen. Any Apotheosis Realm master could pierce through a mountain range, but Death Tide's body literally fused into the earth as if his flesh and blood were a drop of water. Immediately, the Scarlet King's eyes burst with red light, and he perceived the hidden passage inside the mountain range. The entrance was cloaked by some sort of mirage, which was why it looked as if Death Tide had simply vanished. The Scarlet King's eyes narrowed as he perceived Death Tide inside the tunnel, advancing faster and faster back to Karen City. This hidden passage must be one of his trump cards to flee from powerful enemies, and there is no way to say what I would find inside. Normally, the Scarlet King would have chased off to Death Tide into the tunnel. Yet, The events with the ship made him consider the fact that the entire tunnel could be full of explosives and the whole thing was a trap. The Scarlet King did not diminish his momentum even as he considered his next move. He did not stop the chase due to the dangers, nor did he enter the tunnels. Instead, he moved above the mountain range, keeping a lock on Death Tide as he advanced. The plan was to strike Death Tide once this one emerged from the other side of the underground tunnels. Unfortunately for the Scarlet King, he had reached the middle of the mountain range when runes began to materialize above the Earth's surface. An overwhelming burst of energy emerged as the entire mountain range burst into pieces, releasing torrents of sky-blue flames into the sky, annihilating everything in their path. Although the power of the runic formation in the mountain range was directed into the sky, the flames also flooded the lower levels where Death Tide was located. There was resolve and determination in the Atrox's eyes as he pushed forward with greater and greater speed, fueling the Death Wad with all his power as he protected himself from the flames until finally, he could emerge on the other end.
Crack.
The Death Wad shattered to pieces, showing Death Tide's mangled body. Burning wounds covered the right side of his body, but those injuries could not diminish the battle power of an Apotheosis Realm Master. Read latest stories on Freeweb Novel. Death Tide gazed with a cold smile at the bursting flame that kept flooding the sky above the shattered mountain range. That person. He was astute and cunning, but I managed to use it against him. Still, this sky flame runic formation cost me half of the total network I amassed over the last 50 years, but now it is gone. Just as Death Tide clenched his fists due to the loss of wealth, his eyes widened due to an overwhelming sense of danger that assaulted him. He moved to the side, but failed to avoid a red saber from piercing his chest. The weapon had been aimed at his heart, but Death Tide's fast response managed to save it, losing a lung instead. Death Tide felt as if the energy in the weapon was ready to burst, destroying his internal organs, but he was a seasoned warrior who had experienced countless life and death trials. So the moment the blade had pierced his lung, his energy had already gathered to fire a spell.
Deathly repulse.
A burst of necrotic energy emerged from Death Tide's entire body, repelling Slaughter and the Scarlet King for hundreds of meters. The Scarlet King immediately regained control over his body and saw how Death Tide had risen into the sky, using a hand to put pressure on the bleeding wound. Apotheoses' realm masters, even those who followed the essence evolution path of power, had overwhelming vitality and could generate hemostases in most wounds in a second. However, the Scarlet King's energy had destructive properties, thanks to the deadly force of the Law of Darkness and the eroding power of the Law of Blood.
You house.
Death Tide could not help but ask that question as he saw no wound in the Scarlet King's body. Even if the man could resist the power of the Sky Flame formation, it did not make sense that he was intact unless this one was a god.
The formation was truly something. However, I could react before its energy flooded the air and sealed space. Through shadow teleportation, I was able to escape alive and without injuries, but it was close. A fraction of a second slower, and I would have endured deadly wounds.
The Scarlet King was genuinely impressed by the wits and determination of Death Tide, as it took a lot of courage to trigger the runic formation while you were inside the mountain range. So he decided to satiate the man's curiosity. However, stating that he came unharmed was a mistake, as the demonic phantom had shattered again, and he could not reforge as there was not enough energy. That was why he took an assassin approach and aimed to sever Death Tide's heart.
My energy pool is nearing its limit, so you might escape if you can endure a little longer. Let's find out.
Shadows covered Slaughter as the Scarlet King infused the weapon with dark force, improving its destructive power and making his ego wave explode. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 455, Silent World's Incursion. The Scarlet King was resting in the middle of the silent forest. It had been 3 weeks since his fight with Death Tide, and a small starry gem was in his hand. Inside, it was the saint cultivation technique that went by the name of Deathweaver. He extended his hand, and an ominous dark force appeared as he placed it against a tree. This tree began to wither, and its life force flooded into the Scarlet King's body.
System.
The absolute life form system immediately responded to the question in the Scarlet King's mind. Law of Death's mastery, low basic understanding. As he saw that message, a complicated expression appeared on the Scarlet King's face. Deathweaver was a powerful cultivation technique focused on mastering the law of death, which intrigued the Scarlet King. However, there was a problem. The technique's peak was the entrance to the apotheosis realm and did not offer insight into the law of death beyond the basic understanding realm. Find your next adventure on Freewebno. Actually, Death Tide had already reached the peak of the technique, and there was nothing more he could gain from it, forcing him to look for another cultivation technique. In that sense, the Sonic Blade fusion cultivation technique was much better since it guided the Scarlet King's cultivation all the way to the peak of the apotheosis realm.
Although reaching basic understanding in 3 weeks is not bad, clearly my talent in the law of death cannot compare with that of the law of blood and law of darkness.
Ultimately, the Scarlet King decided not to focus on the Deathweaver cultivation technique. Once he mastered the most basic spell of Death Touch, which could help him restore his vitality in case of danger, he stored the starry gem in his space ring. After handling that, the Scarlet King waved his hand, taking 6 massive giant carcasses from his space rings. All of them still had beating hearts, as he had used the law of blood to prevent the blood vitality from fading.
It is time.
The Scarlet King had not just been training in the Deathweaver cultivation technique over the last 3 weeks. He constantly battled powerful Grand King beasts, using their blood to improve the power of his blood flame. Now, it was finally time to take the next step. His body began to tremble as tendrils of essence wave-pierced into the bodies of the Grand King beasts' corpses, ferociously devouring the blood from their bodies, sending all of it into the blood flame. The blood flame inside the Scarlet King had reached the peak of the Wave Champion level 2 weeks ago. Usually, it would have remained at that level until the cultivation base of the Scarlet King attained at least the peak Wave Champion rank. However, thanks to his higher mastery over the law of blood, it was able to surpass that blockade and push forward. After consuming every last drop of blood from those gargantuan Grand King beasts, a pillar of blood energy emerged from the Scarlet King's body, rising hundreds of meters into the sky, flooding the air with a metallic taste. Once it was over, the Scarlet King opened his eyes, and a small smile appeared as he felt the bursting blood energy running through his meridians.
System, scan me.
Scanning vessel, scan of vessel completed. Name, Cain Lorifa. Race, Godslayer humankind. Path of power, Astral Rebirth Middle Wave Champion, Essence Evolution Late Wave Champion. Lineage, True Avernus lineage, Maximum Purity. Wave Talent, Initial Tier 9, Medium Tier 9. Stats: Strength 57. Agility 33.7. Vitality 65.2. Astral Wave 37.7. Essence Wave 47 right arrow 51.4. Blood Energy Astral 49.6. Blood Energy Essence 51.6 right arrow 65.5. Blood Rebirth Golden Blood Stage right arrow Pseudo Mercury Stay. Main Law Mastery Law of Blood Medium Law Fragmentation. Secondary Law Mastery Law of Darkness Low Law Fragmentation. Note 1. Wave virus inside the vessel enhanced wave talent by 28.1%. A wide smile appeared on the Scarlet King's face as he managed to attain an energy pool of the Wave King level while still being a Wave Champion. The Wave King's blood flame would significantly increase his stamina and durability during a battle. The Scarlet King was highly pleased with his improvement as he had advanced dramatically during the last year. While there was still a long way to go until the Wave King ranks, he had grown rapidly thanks to his abundant resources and talent. However, besides his cultivation base, the Scarlet King also focused on his tribulation enhancement profession and had made great strides in creating a 16 revolution flame. He was sure that if he consulted with Astrid, he would overcome the details that kept him from advancing to the next level. The Scarlet King was ready to return to Evernite to consult with the woman when suddenly his computer ring began to glow. Leda, I have great news regarding the special mission. Should we meet?
The Scarlet King's eyes widened as he heard the message from Dark Mask, and he immediately commanded this one to gather in the warehouse they used as a secret meeting location. Although the information could be shared through the computer ring, the Scarlet King did not trust the network of this device enough to speak about those matters. In a couple of hours, the Scarlet King and Dark Mask were inside the Hollow Mountain, and the latter performed a deep bow before sharing the information.
Lita, the higher-ups from Silent World have contacted me. There is an incursion on the way as they plan to attack one of the main strongholds of the Blood Path.
The Scarlet King nodded but showed little interest, as he did not care about power distribution in the underworld. Dark Mask knew that, so there must be another reason why the man summoned him.
The incursion is to steal resources, but I heard they are also after a teleportation formation that connects to the Hyperion continent, home of the Deus Bahamut race. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 456, Harnessing the Power of the Concepts, I. Although Dark Mask had no idea why the Scarlet King was interested in the teleportation formation, it was not his place to question his leader, so he just made sure to relay the information. Thrill appeared in the Scarlet King's eyes as he heard that news. Although it would have been better to teleport to Gaia, with his identity, it would be easy to secure a teleportation back to his home once he reached the Hyperion continent.
Tell me more about this incursion.
At this point, a flash of disappointment appeared on Dark Mask's face as he lowered his head.
I am sorry, leader, but that is all the information I could get. Once the envoy of Silent World knew my cultivation base was below the Apotheosis realm, he refused to share more details. According to his words, if I want to be part of the incursion, I should recover my cultivation to at least the Wind Tribulation Apotheosis realm in less than a month.
The Scarlet King could not help but frown as he heard those words. Everybody thought that Dark Mask's cultivation base had fallen to the late wave king rank due to the injuries from the Lost Battle, but he knew the truth. The original Dark Mask was dead, and there was no way the new one could reach the Apotheosis realm in 1 month. Due to the lineage and Saint Revolution refinement, his talent had obtained a massive qualitative upgrade. However, it was still impossible to advance so much in such a short period of time. However, as the Scarlet King analyzed all the information, a flash of enlightenment appeared in his eyes.
The fact that they were willing to make a concession, granting you the chance to enter the war effort if you recover, could mean they are lower in number.
Explore new worlds at Freeweb Novel.
You are right, leader. After the vanishing of Death Tide, there had been great havoc among the Tier 1 Dark faction as they all sought to devour his domain, leading to several deaths and many injuries. I was careful, only taking back my territories so as not to draw unnecessary attention from other Apotheosis realm masters.
Dark Mask's eyes were full of awe as he knew the one who took out Death Tide was the person before him, leading to the sudden upheaval in the underworld.
If they are willing to give you time to restore your cultivation base now, Silent World would allow you to join the battle effort with your current power if they suddenly lack troops, as they will be forced to replace quality with quantity.
Killing intent appeared in the eyes of the Scarlet King as he was determined to participate in that incursion, and anyone who was a problem would be exterminated without hesitation. Dark Mask saw that killing intent and was extremely glad not to be part of the masked monsters list.
I will take out the competition, but it would be good if you can improve your battle power to the Apotheosis realm.
The Scarlet King stared at Dark Mask as he analyzed this one. Dark Mask had entered the late Wave King stage less than a month ago, and thanks to his lineage and Saint Revolution refinement, his battle power touched the Apotheosis realm, but that was as far as it could go. He would not last long facing a true Wind Tribulation Apotheosis master, much less a Flesh Calamity Apotheosis master. There were many ways in which one could improve their battle power, and the most straightforward for an Essence cultivator would be Law Mastery. But Dark Mask had already reached the extreme basic understanding of the Law of Ice, and jumping to the Law Fragmentation stage in a few weeks without a heavenly treasure would not be easy. However, there was another force that Dark Mask could master, which could grant a massive upgrade to his battle power.
Have you embarked on the path of concepts?
Dark Mask softly shook his head as he heard that. While he had reached the second realm of the ego eternal path of power after obtaining his revenge against Silent Shadow, the concepts were still a foreign power for him. The Scarlet King was not surprised, since even geniuses of the ego eternal path of power took a while to delve into the power of concepts after reaching mind over wave. Even he would not have advanced so fast in his understanding of the concept of sundering if not for his immensely powerful alter ego, the teachings of Zarak, and the enlightenment granted by the first collapsing lightning pillars Sod Strike. After signaling Dark Mask to adopt a meditative stance, the Scarlet King did the same and stared at this one after both calmed their minds and hearts.
Concepts are abstract cosmic forces, born from the shared consciousness and cultural understandings of sentient life forms, unlike the laws which govern the universe's fundamental physical and energetic properties. Unlike laws which are inherent to the universe's structure, concepts derive their power from belief, perception, and interpretation. This makes them potentially more malleable and dynamic. There are no barriers blocking understanding of the myriad of concepts, but following those we have no attunement to will be a waste of potential. That is why we must follow those that reflect our nature.
After providing that brief description, the Scarlet King took a deep breath and closed his eyes. The next second, his ego wave flooded the room. It didn't take long for the red foss to take the form of a majestic sun seed with a yin-yang pattern, featuring bright red flames on the right side and dark ones on the left. Dark Mask's eyes widened as he beheld the sun seed. An alter ego form could not be dictated, as it was a metaphysical representation of how you saw yourself at Yaka. As he witnessed the majesty of the sun seed, he was once again convinced that the man before him was a monster who transcended the limits of understanding. The Scarlet King no longer cared about people witnessing his duality alter ego. After releasing it, he raised his index finger.
I am a sun, an embodiment of power capable of sundering all the darkness.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 457, Harnessing the Power of the Concepts, I
am a sun, an embodiment of power capable of sundering all the darkness.
As he uttered those words, the Scarlet King lowered his index finger, and the next second, an invisible arc of energy clashed against the wall, leaving a deep cut.
I sunder all the obstacles in my path. That is my way, which is why I can summon the power of the sundering concept. But what are you?
After that demonstration, the Scarlet King focused on Dark Mask, and this one softly nodded before taking a deep breath, unleashing a blue force field. Initially, his ego wave had been white, but over the last couple of months, it had undergone a change as he embraced the identity of Dark Mask more and more. Find your next adventure on Freeweb Novel. While seeing that change in color made the Scarlet King nod softly, there was no actual modification in the power or might of the ego wave, as the color was just a basic preference of the individual. The blue force field didn't take long to coalesce and give birth to a mountain. There was no life in it, and its surface was extremely flat, as if it had endured a long torment under the power of the elements, but it stood firm.
Solid mountain.
The Scarlet King focused on the mountain, and he could see that Dark Mask's past had been very harsh, having suffered great pain but managed to endure without breaking. It was a formidable quality that could open the gates to great power. Suddenly, the power of the sun seed burst, as fierce scarlet flames flooded the solid mountain, making a painful expression appear in Dark Mask's eyes.
My willpower burns everything in my path. Nothing can stop me from rising into the sky and sundering the firmament. What do you do as you face my flames?
Dark Mask heard those words inside his mind as the scarlet flames kept striking his mountain. A flash of confusion appeared in his eyes as that question carried a deep meaning, but he could not find the answer.
What do you do as you face my flames?
Once again, the question echoed in Dark Mask's mind, and the pain in his mind only increased, but he couldn't find the answer and only kept resisting as the pressure reached a critical level.
What do you do?
Dark Mask clenched his teeth, and the pain he began to endure was overwhelming, making him shift between consciousness and unconsciousness.
What do you do?
Those words sounded so loud in Doc Mosk's mind that it nearly knocked him out, but the blue light in his eyes exploded as he shouted.
I endureth.
As Doc Mosk uttered those words, the solid mountain stopped trembling, and its ability to resist the power of the Scarlet Flame improved drastically. The Scarlet King saw that and softly nodded as he smiled, dispersing his son's seed. He remained silent as Doc Mosk seemed to be in a trance, discovering more about his true nature. It lasted for over 5 minutes until Doc Mosk finally regained focus, and a sharp light appeared in his eyes as he stared at the Scarlet King.
Remember that feeling, harness it and use it as a catalyst to understand the power of the concepts. After that, you must adapt it to your battle style. Thank you very much for your guidance, leader.
Doc Mosk performed a deep bow before leaving the warehouse, leaving the Scarlet King alone, who began to prepare himself for his own mission. Over the next couple of weeks, an upheaval went through the Tier 1 Dark factions under Silent World, as a powerful individual with a red mask began to assault all of them. He attacked the upper echelon of the factions, but his true and final target was always the Apotheosis Realm Masters who led these forces. Some of the Apotheosis Realm Masters, who had gone through the water tribulation or already experienced the flesh calamity, were able to survive this person's attacks, but were severely wounded. According to reports, the killer's power was at the early stages of the Apotheosis realm. Still, he was a very proficient assassin, and many of their targets ended with severe and nearly lethal wounds before the actual battle even started. In just 2 weeks, 3 Apotheosis Masters perished, and half a dozen more were severely wounded, generating so much havoc that the Tier 1 Dark factions began to demand the involvement of Silent World. While Silent World was an extremely powerful Tier 0 Dark faction and could kill an Apotheosis Realm Master without a problem, the problem lay in the fact that the person was too good at covering his tracks and left no evidence of his whereabouts. The Tier 0 Dark faction concluded it was the same person who had previously attacked Dark Hand and might have been involved in the disappearance of Death Tide. Still, that did not help them very much. The Scarlet King silently walked through the alleys of a small city, heading towards the house of the city lord, Sarl Olan. The city's ruler was known to be a very amicable and responsible person, but no one knew that he was also the leader of a Tier 1 Dark faction that went by the name of Parasite. It took a lot of effort to figure out the identity of Parasite's leader, and right now, the Scarlet King is on his way to ending Sarl's life. The man was a Wind Tribulation Apotheosis Realm Master, so it would not be a problem. However, his eyes narrowed just as the Scarlet King was about to reach the city lord's home. Bone Calamity Apotheosis Master present inside the home. The woman is hiding her true cultivation and disguises herself as Sarl's secretary. The Scarlet King raised his guard but was not really surprised, as his actions surely drew the attention of Silent World, and they could not allow someone to harm their Tier 1 Dark factions without repercussions. Well, I guess that is it. With all the people I killed and injured, they will need to refill their ranks with weaker warriors. Although the Scarlet King could go after other Tier 1 Dark faction leaders, those not hiding must surely be guarded by hidden agents from Silent World waiting to ambush him. Not wasting time, the Scarlet King turned around and calmly exited the city. No one saw him enter, and no one saw him leave either. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 458, Atrox Duke. Before the meeting with Doc Mosk, the Scarlet King was ready to return to Evernite. Now, after nearly a dozen fights to the death against Apotheosis Realm Masters, he was prepared to consolidate those insights and improve his skills in tribulation enhancement. Discover stories at FreeWebNovel. Just as the Scarlet King changed his appearance, honing the disguise of Kine, a message reached his computer ring. 36 days. They were only one word and a number, but it was enough for the Scarlet King to understand that Doc Mosk had secured a spot in Silent World's incursion against Blood Path, which would take place in 36 days. A sharp light appeared in the Scarlet King's eyes as he understood it would be just a little over a month before he could reach the Hyperion continent. From there, with his identity as Cain Lorifer, one of the most exceptional geniuses of the Godslayer humankind, and his connection with one of the strongest sector dukes of the Empire, the collapsing Lightning Duke, it would be a mere transaction to go back to Gaia. Of course, the Scarlet King did not delude himself into thinking that hijacking Silent World's incursion would be easy. Not only would there be several powerful Apotheosis Realm Masters from both sides flooding the battlefield who would see him as an enemy, but a fight between Tier 0 Dark factions was bound to have the presence of Divine Ascension Masters. I can handle the Apotheosis Masters. However, avoiding the Divine Ascension Masters with my current cultivation might be impossible. As the Scarlet King formulated his plan, a sharp light appeared in his eyes. There was one person who could help him handle the Divine Ascension Masters, and he had a way to ensure that person could not refuse. After reaching Evernite, the Scarlet King did not waste time and immediately headed to Astrid's home. He had contacted the young woman through his computer ring, and she was waiting for him at the entrance.
You have been absent more than usual this time. Everything is all right.
Astrid's eyes showed a flash of concern, as it was not like Cain to miss a gala, even if it was just for show. The Scarlet King only smiled. He had intended to return, but the matter with the Tier 1 Dark factions kept him busy. Luckily, he had the perfect explanation for his extended absence, one that could help things carry on.
I met with my master. Really, that is great. Did he offer you his personal guidance in the formation of Saint Refinement Flames?
Astrid's eyes widened with thrill and excitement. In her mind, Cain's master was an extremely talented tribulation enhancer whose insights surely must be much greater than hers. The Scarlet King expected such a reaction from the young woman. Of course, his insight into the formation of Saint Revolution Flames did not suddenly improve to the point where he could advise Astrid. Still, there was another factor to tribulation enhancement.
When Master saw the path we were taking, he said that we were advancing through a unique approach, so we should keep our path and not fall into orthodoxy. However, he did teach me the art of enhancement, and I can currently perform 15 revolution refinements with a 100% success rate.
A complicated expression appeared on Astrid's face when she heard that the eccentric master would not guide them due to their unorthodox approach. But immediately, a wave of excitement and thrill appeared as she realized that Cain had a 100% success rate with 15 revolution refinements. Creating a 15 revolution flame and being able to use it were two completely different things.
That is awesome.
Astrid was genuinely impressed by the Scarlet King's achievements. The Scarlet King stared at the woman for a moment as a small smile appeared on his face.
The reason I came to see you is unrelated to tribulation enhancement. However, we need to meet with your father first.
Astrid's eyes showed confusion as she did not understand why Cain would want to speak with her father. But before she could say a word, both heard a voice in their minds.
If you want to talk, come to the main hall.
Although Astrid was a little surprised to hear her father's voice so suddenly, the Scarlet King was not, as he had always felt the eyes of the man present whenever he spoke with the young woman.
Don't worry, everything will become clear soon. Let's go.
The Scarlet King spoke to the young woman, and while she was still a little confused, she nodded, and they walked to the castle's main hall. At the end of the hall was a small throne, and in it sat an imposing Atrox covered in blue armor made of oceanic minerals. His eyes glowed with a silver light that seemed capable of setting the air ablaze with a single thought.
I humbly greet Duke William Severus.
The Scarlet King had already learned more about Astrid's family, and the man on the throne was a duke of the Atrox Immotus Empire who began his path less than 1,000 years ago as a commoner without any background at all. William stared at the Scarlet King for a long time, and the light in his eyes grew colder as he saw the way in which his daughter acted around the young man.
I have watched over you, and you have seemed all right up to this point, but the fact that you requested a meeting could easily be interpreted as you getting close to my daughter to get to me.
Astrid's eyes widened as she heard those words, and an uncomfortable feeling assaulted her as she turned to Cain. More than one person had tried to get close to her due to her background, but she was smart enough to keep them away, and she was sure that Kyne was different since he was only interested in tribulation enhancement. But the sudden meeting with her father might suggest she was wrong. The Scarlet King noticed the look on Astrid's face, and he showed a kind smile to the woman before turning to William.
I did not come here to ask for your help. I came to offer you a path to cure Astrid.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 459, Dealing with an Atrox Duke, I. William and Astrid's eyes widened as they heard those words, and they could not believe what they just heard. However, just as hope was about to emerge in their hearts, the looks on their faces hardened. The young Atrox remained silent, but the Duke's eyes grew emotionless. The Scarlet King felt his instincts screaming danger, but did not lose his calm. The duo's reaction was not surprising, as he would have acted the same way if someone had told him that they could bring back to life the person who was currently lying in a special coffin in his space ring. Discover hidden content at Freeweb Novel. Giving hope to someone was extremely dangerous. If they thought you were playing with them, it could lead to them unleashing their fury on you. Of course, since the Scarlet King knew all of this, he was ready to face the wrath and coldness in their hearts.
I understand that you might doubt me. After all, with your power and background, I am sure that every specialist and healer in the continent has seen Astrid, and they all came to the same conclusion. She could not be healed.
Astrid's fists tightened as she heard those words, since she had not forgotten the sense of hope that every new master generated, but in the end, they all failed. It came to the point that having hope was just too painful.
I understand the impact of my words, but I assure you I would not say them if I was not certain.
Astrid's fists softened as she heard those words, since it meant that Kyne was not just carelessly talking and might really have a way to help her. As for her father, his eyes grew cold, a significant improvement from the emotionless slaughter intent he was hiding before.
Continue.
William only uttered that word, and his eyes burned with silver light. There was no price he would not be willing to pay to help his daughter so she could live a very long life. Still, he did not lose himself in hope and kept a cold mind. The Scarlet King nodded and took a deep breath as a sharp look appeared in his eyes.
Of course, the one who can heal Astrid is not me, but my master. While you two already know of his proficiency in tribulation enhancement, his main professional path is genetic coding.
William stared at Kyne and maintained silence for a few seconds before speaking.
I have already consulted with the best genetic coders of the Empire, and they all told me that there is no way to fix the congenital disability in Astrid's crippled sacred organs.
The Scarlet King immediately shook his head, as he was aware that suppressing defecting genes would not be enough to help Astrid.
I don't know about the level of the genetic coders from the Atrox Immortus Empire, but I assure you they are below my master's tier. Besides, he doesn't plan to fix Astrid's sacred organs. He will reset her genome to the most basic state of the Atrox Immortus race, allowing a complete rebirth of every organ and system in her body.
At this point, William's eyes widened, and a flash of hope appeared in his eyes. He was an astral cultivator at the peak of the apotheosis realm and understood a great deal of the mysteries of the body. The process that Kyne was describing could indeed get rid of any congenital disability in Astrid and help her. Still, the mastery over genetic coding to achieve that was something no one in the Atrox Immortus Empire came even close to attaining. William took a deep breath and calmed his raging emotions, focusing on Kyne.
How certain is your master of being able to heal my daughter?
The Scarlet King's face was full of confidence as he heard that question. He had already scanned Astrid with the AI chip module and calculated using the Atomic Genetic Rewrites tool on her. While he was unaware of what type of effect it would have on the young woman in the long run, the system had assured him that Astrid's congenital disability that prevented her from training would cease to exist. The only downside was that it would cost him 1M Destiny Foss to use the tool on the young woman, but it was worth it if he could obtain the help of her father in this mission, not to mention that his personal feelings toward her also pushed him to help her. Astrid felt her heart beating faster and faster as she waited for Kain's answer. She had already given up on her fate. Still, upon seeing the flash of hope in her father's eyes and the confidence in Kain's face, she could not help but grow excited at the prospect of being able to use her sacred organs and finally embarking on the path of power.
There is a 100% certainty. You can be present as Master performs the procedure, and he can be done before the mission, as long as you give your word that you will help him when the time comes.
The Scarlet King stared into the eyes of the Atrox Duke and saw how they could not stop glowing. I got him. William had indeed fallen into the grip of hope, and the fact that Kain's master was willing to perform the procedure before carrying on with the mission told him the level of certainty of the deal. However, there was one critical point they needed to handle, and that was the payment. Kain was the son of an archduke of the Inferno Demon Empire, and the fact that he came to someone from a different race to ask for assistance hinted at the type of shady favor the deal would entail. William was a man of honor who had stood on the front lines of the battlefield his entire life, but as he stared at his young daughter, a sense of resolution appeared in his eyes. There was nothing he would not be willing to do to heal her. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 460, Dealing with an Atrox Duke, Heir.
Astrid, it might be good if you leave and let us speak alone.
Astrid stared at her father and understood that he did not want her to hear the price he would have to pay, as it might be something that went against his ethical code. While the young Atrox wanted the opportunity to cultivate more than anything in her life, she did not know if her father's honor would be a price she could accept. However, before Astrid could say a word, the Scarlet King spoke.
She can stay if she can keep a secret. After all, while the mission is extremely dangerous and requires the utmost secrecy, it should not be something that goes against your sense of justice and honor, or even the rules and codes of the Atrox Immortus Empire.
The Scarlet King saw how the duo looked at him incredulously, and he simply smiled before continuing. Explore more stories with Freeweb Novel.
Master only needs you to interfere during a fight between two Tier 0 dark factions. You need to keep the Divine Ascension Masters at bay as he carries on with his mission. It will be a few minutes at most, and then you can escape or call reinforcements from the Empire.
William and Astrid's eyes widened as they heard the mission. It was indeed dangerous, but not something that would bring shame or embarrassment. As a Duke of the Atrox Immortus Empire, fighting underworld warriors under any context was a display of honor and courage. Actually, if William were to lead the forces of the Empire into a fight between two Tier 0 dark factions, he would gain a great deal of honor and praise.
Is it really just that?
Astrid asked with a look of wonder as she stared at Kain. The eccentric master would provide a service that no one else in the entire world could, yet he only asked for assistance against members of the underworld. The man could very well also demand a significant amount of wealth and resources along with the favor, and William would not hesitate to abide. The Scarlet King smiled kindly to Astrid and softly shook his head.
I also want to see you well, and Master knows it. That is why, as long as your father can help him distract those Divine Ascension Masters, he is willing to heal you.
William had lived a long life and experienced all sorts of relationships. He could see the genuineness in the young man's words, and was certain the only reason the master did not ask for more was the connection between Kain and Astrid.
If that is all I need to do for your master to heal my daughter, then I am more than willing to do it. However, I need to ask you some questions as I need the full picture to prepare myself. Underestimating Tier 0 dark factions will be suicidal. I expect you and your master can understand that.
The Scarlet King stopped looking at Astrid, and a solemn aura replaced the kindness in his eyes, as he knew the words of the Duke were truthful.
Yes, I am aware of all the aspects of the mission, so you can ask me all the information you want to know.
William was not surprised that Kain knew the details. After all, his master used him as a proxy for these negotiations.
According to my information, your master goes by the name of Scarlet King. Is that the same person who has been terrorizing the Tier 1 dark factions under Silent World?
Astrid was surprised to hear those words and realized that her father had been investigating Kain, but the Scarlet King expected the man to examine him in detail since he was so close to his daughter. As for the information about the upheaval in the underworld, it made sense that the high-ups from the Atrox Immortus Empire would know it.
You are correct. Silent World is one of the Tier 0 dark factions that will be in the battle, and the other will be Bloodpath. The fight will begin due to an incursion of Silent World on one of Bloodpath's main research centers.
William's eyes narrowed as he heard that information. Despite his status, he knew nothing about an incursion. Clearly, Kyne's master had a great understanding of the underworld.
Do you know the strength of warriors that will take place in this incursion? Silent World was only recruiting Apotheosis Realm masters at the beginning, but after recent problems, they began to gather late and peak wave warriors for their troops.
William nodded, and he was able to relax a little. If the ones on the battlefield are wave kings, then the strongest warriors on both sides will be at the level of divine ascension masters, and no gods will be present. The logic behind this deduction was simple, since there was no point in having wave kings on the battlefield if a god were to enter it. Wave kings can do nothing against gods unless they have a ridiculous numerical advantage and perform suicidal tactics, so having both simultaneously on a battlefield made no sense.
I can indeed generate a great impact on such a type of battlefield, and distracting two divine ascension masters while they are fighting each other will not be complicated. When will it happen?
As he asked that question, the resolve and fighting spirit in William's eyes burst. He was ready to fight and only needed to know when.
The incursion will take place in 36 days. I need to return with masters a little before that, and he will then meet with you two outside Evernite to heal Astrid.
William's eyes narrowed when he heard how Kyne's master would not enter Evernite, but he simply nodded. That person wanted to keep his identity a secret, but the reason did not matter. The man just needed to heal his daughter, and he would keep his word and fight.
I will be in my cultivation abode for the next month. Just inform me before you leave, and let me know when and where we will meet your master.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 461, 18 Revolution Flame. The Atrox Duke stood up and glanced at Kyne and Astrid for a moment before exiting the hall, leaving the duo alone.
Will I really be able to cultivate?
After her father left, Astrid spoke those words with a trembling voice. Yesterday was an impossible dream, but now it seemed it would only be a matter of time. Everything was so shocking that the young woman did not know how to respond. The Scarlet King gave the young Atrox woman a kind smile as he patted her head.
You will gain the power to fly through the sky, shatter mountains with your hands, and live for thousands of years.
After saying those words, the Scarlet King turned around and left for the guest room he had previously occupied. It was better to let Astrid acclimate to the news alone. The following month, the Scarlet King remained in Severus Castle and spent his days with Astrid as the duo continued their training in tribulation enhancement. There was a new sense of thrill and purpose in the young Atrox woman's eyes, as she knew that soon she would no longer be limited to theoretical knowledge, and could genuinely practice the creation of revolution flames and perform revolution refinement. Unlike their last practice sessions, in which the Scarlet King paid more attention to his cultivation and only left the mornings for tribulation enhancement, he focused solely on the profession now. He did not know when he would see Astrid again after using the teleportation formation to travel to the Hyperion continent. After all, the animosity between the Dark races and the Godslayer humankind ran deep. Since the Scarlet King focused only on tribulation refinement, he improved at a breathtaking speed, and in 4 days he was able to generate a 16 revolution flame. However, from this point forward, every single step was like scaling a mountain whose peak was covered by clouds. No matter how much the Scarlet King progressed, it felt like he would never reach the next level. Luckily, Astrid's help and guidance helped him overcome several bottlenecks. The Scarlet King and Astrid remained in complete silence as they stared at the colorful flames in the hands of the Scarlet King, growing more and more powerful. There were times when the flame would grow unstable, but they were ready and immediately adjusted the ignition and pressure of the life wave being used as fuel. Finally, after nearly 7 hours of absolute focus and concentration, a burst of light emerged from the flames, filling the room with 18 majestic colors. Smiles full of thrill and happiness appeared on the faces of the Scarlet King and Astrid as they saw the 18 revolution flame. They had put all their effort and hard work into this task and finally succeeded. Your next episode number awaits on Freeweb Novel. After gazing at the flame, the Scarlet King and Astrid looked at each other, and a complicated expression appeared on their faces. They knew it was time for Kyne to depart, as he had to meet his master. The Scarlet King's expression soon grew calm as he showed a kind smile and deposited the 18 revolution flame in a sphere before handing it over to Astrid.
I expect you to create one that can surpass this in the future.
Astrid did not know what to say after taking the sphere with the Saint Revolution flame. There were all kinds of sentiments in her heart, but there was also confusion in her eyes as she did not know what to do. Ultimately, the woman's eyes grew sharp as she took the golden book and handed it to the Scarlet King.
Please take it. I have written down all the insights I gained as I investigated the creation of 19, 20, and 21 revolution flames. Right now, I already have all the knowledge needed to push my ability to the Saint Tribulation Enhancer's level. You can hand me the book back when we see each other again in the future.
The Scarlet King stared at the golden book for a moment before a flash of tenderness appeared in his eyes as he took it, and then patted the young woman's head.
I have already sent your father the coordinates my master gave me. Be sure to take care of yourself.
That was the last thing Astrid heard as the Scarlet King turned around and vanished from her sight, leaving the castle and Evennite. A few hours after the Scarlet King left Evennite, he appeared in the secret warehouse and saw Dark Mask waiting for him. The Scarlet King stared at Dark Mask as this one bowed, and his eyes narrowed as he felt an extremely solid and durable aura coming from him. He nodded in approval, as he was sure that Dark Mask had already managed to harness the power of concepts, an awe-inspiring feat and something that would improve his chances of survival during the incursion. Dark Mask did not waste time and waved his hand, making a small black pyramid appear and handing it over to the Scarlet King.
As you requested, leader, this is a space storage artifact capable of holding life. It can endure an energy level of the apotheosis realm, and inside are all the resources you asked for.
Just as Dark Mask finished speaking, his eyes detected a person entering the secret warehouse. Was I followed? Dark Mask's eyes widened as he realized he might have led someone here. He understood he needed to make things clear, or his life could be in danger. However, before Dark Mask could say a single word, the Scarlet King raised his hand.
There is no need to worry. He is with us.
Dark Mask was surprised by those words, and the surprise soon turned into shock as he realized that the newcomer was none other than Death Tide. Unit glanced at Dark Mask for a moment, but did not focus on him and instead turned to the Scarlet King before performing a deep bow.
Leader.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 462, 17 Revolution Refinement. Dark Mask could not hide his shock as he stared at Death Tide. He believed that the leader of Death Ocean had perished at the hands of the masked monster, but that was not the case. The Scarlet King stared at Death Tide and softly nodded as he felt the power of the man. Unlike what everybody else thought, their battle had actually ended in a draw. Still, instead of escaping after the Scarlet King's energy pool was depleted, Death Tide remained steady and requested to become part of his group. Continue your adventure at Freeweb Novel. Although the Scarlet King was surprised, he could see the value of someone so cunning and wise as Death Tide among his troops. Of course, there were also dangers, but he was confident in his ability to handle the man. After leaving an ego mark inside Death Tide's brain, the Scarlet King improved the man's bloodline before performing a 15 revolution refinement on his flesh and blood. The upgrade in talent was the reason there were already signs of Death Tide nearing the water tribulation.
As requested, leader, I have gathered all the wealth from Death Ocean, the city of Karen, and the Karen family. I use all of it to obtain resources full of vitality and energy.
Death Tide handed a space ring to the Scarlet King, and he smiled. With the treasure in it, he would not have to spend days hunting grand king beasts and other animals to obtain energy and vitality for his Saint Revolution flames. After looking at the duo, the Scarlet King's eyes grew solemn.
I will be leaving soon and don't know when I will return. You two will remain in control of Dark Hand and improve its power. I expect that by the time I see you again, it has become the strongest Tier 1 Dark faction in the entire Uranus sector.
Complicated expressions appeared in the duo's eyes when they heard those words. Both were aware of the Scarlet King's search for intercontinental teleportation formation. They suspected this one would leave Kronos, but his departure came sooner than expected. Having basked in his might and talent, Dark Mask and Death Tide could not help but feel lost on how to proceed.
I can perform a 17 revolution refinement on your flesh and bodies, but the chances of success are only 75%. That means that there is a very good chance either, or even both, could die during the process.
As they heard that offer, a solemn light appeared in Death Tide and Dark Mask's eyes. They knew the immense improvement a 15 revolution refinement had done to their foundation and talent. If they went through the 17 revolution refinement, there was no doubt in their minds that the path to the peak of the apotheosis realm would open for them. Still, it was not an easy decision, as the chance of a horrible death was 25%. Determination appeared in the eyes of Dark Mask and Death Tide as they took a step forward. More than once, they had put their lives in immense danger only to survive, but now they would do it to gain the power to touch the divine. That was a goal worthy of the risk. The Scarlet King nodded as he saw the duo's resolve, and he was sure he would leave the farce he created in the Kronos continent in good hands. He waved his hand, taking out an impressive refinement cauldron that glowed with silver light. His previous refinement cauldron had exploded due to the immense power of the Saint Revolution flames. Still, this one was of platinum grade, much more resilient than the gold grade one he had used before, and should withstand the power of the refinement revolutions.
Death Tide.
Unit immediately nodded as he jumped into the refinement cauldron and saw a 17 revolution flame by his side. Soon after, the lid of the cauldron was closed, and the flames were unleashed, all coalescing around his body.
Behemoth.
A burst echoed across the warehouse as a shocking amount of world energy began to flood the refinement cauldron and merge into Unit's body. The wind tribulation apotheosis, Master's eyes widened as he felt the power of the world energy filling his body, and he immediately used every ounce of his willpower to make it course through his flesh and blood. Bursting red light appeared in the Scarlet King's eyes as he pushed his mind to the absolute peak, using every ounce of strength and skill at his disposal to ensure the enhancement was completed and prevent Unit's body from exploding like a balloon full of blood. As the Scarlet King continued with the enhancement, he could not help but be happy that he did not choose to go with the 18 revolution flame. Creating one was not difficult, but the amount of energy such a flame could bring would reduce his chance of success to less than 30%. It took immense effort and hard work, but the Scarlet King managed to perform the Saint Tribulation refinement on Unit. The lid of the refinement cauldron soon opened, and Death Tide emerged the next second. There was a look of shock and awe in his eyes as he stared at his body and felt the upgrade granted by the 17 revolution refinement. Unit's focus shifted to the state of his evolution car, and he saw how its energy had grown extremely pure, but that was not all. The metamorphosis brought by the wind tribulation had been drastically improved. With my current state, surpassing the water tribulation will be no problem at all. Death Tide found it hard to calm down after realizing the immense improvement in his cultivation. He clasped his hands and performed a deep bow toward the Scarlet King. The Scarlet King nodded toward Death Tide and turned to Dark Mask, who was looking at him with eyes full of resolution. He rested for a few hours, allowing his mind to recover to its peak before carrying on with the tribulation enhancement. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 463, Atomic Genetic Rewrite I. Having learned from his past experience, and thanks to Dark Mask's bursting willpower and resolution, the Scarlet King was once again able to perform a 17 revolution enhancement. Dark Mask emerged from the cauldron once the refinement was completed, and the same look of awe and shock as Death Tide could be seen on his face as he saw the extremely pure and dense state of his essence wave. After finishing the Saint Revolution refinement on the duo, the Scarlet King rested his mind again, which seemed like it would split apart due to the immense mental effort. Once he opened his eyes, he stared at the duo for a moment before waving his hand and taking the Tier 1 biogenetic chamber from his space ring. Dark Mask and Death Tide looked at each other as the Scarlet King began to fill the Tier 1 biogenetic chamber with all kinds of resources, but they remained silent and simply waited to see what would happen. The Scarlet King finished processing the materials after an hour and then turned toward Dark Mask. There was no need for words as Dark Mask removed his armor and jumped into the Tier 1 biogenetic chamber. Soon, he felt changes occurring in his bloodline as the genes that granted his ice lineage were being improved. The Scarlet King had tasked the AI chip module to generate a genetic formula that could improve the power and purity of the ice lineage in Dark Mask's body, and he was now going ahead with it. After a few hours, Dark Mask's body began to tremble as a rune began to form over his back, generating a mighty freezing aura. The Scarlet King smiled as he finished the improvement and saw the appearance of a blood rune on Dark Mask's body, signifying that the lineage had reached the peak apotheosis level. Dark Mask emerged from the chamber, and the look in his eyes was pure thrill as he clenched his fists and felt the immense power running through his veins.
My current power should allow me to defeat Wind Tribulation Apotheosis Masters and stand a chance against those at the Water Tribulation.
Not only was Dark Mask extremely happy for the enhanced power, but his chances of survival during Silent World's incursion had improved drastically. The Scarlet King nodded as he saw the power of Dark Mask, and he took a break before preparing the Tier 1 biogenetic chamber again. Death Tide saw the red-masked man's eyes focused on him, and he immediately mimicked Dark Mask, taking off his armor and getting into the chamber. The Scarlet King's expression was calm as he carried on with the process, as this one was particularly easier since he had a lot of practice. He was improving the Avernus bloodline in Unit's body to the true Avernus bloodline. The Wind Tribulation Apotheosis realm Master felt strength surging through his veins as a black rune materialized over his right shoulder. Once Death Tide emerged from the Tier 1 biogenetic chamber, waves of darkness and shadows emanated from his body. Dark Mask and Death Tide looked at each other, and their eyes showed fierce determination and fighting spirit. Although Urin was stronger due to his higher cultivation base, there was not much difference, and it would not be long before Dark Mask faced the Wind Tribulation.
The combined power of you two should be enough to defeat a Water Tribulation Master. As long as you are careful, there should be no threat to Dark Hand you cannot handle.
The Scarlet King focused on the duo, and these ones focused, making sure they would not miss a single word.
Dark Mask, you will be the face of Dark Hand, while Death Tide will be its shadow. Work together to improve the faction's strength but keep a low profile. It is better if everyone thinks you are weak until your power has risen to the point you can stand alone without the help or protection of anyone.
Dark Mask and Death Tide nodded as they engraved those words in their minds. They would not grow cocky due to their enhanced power and talent, as it would be easy for other dark factions to become jealous of them and target them. After seeing that the duo took his words with the seriousness that they required, the Scarlet King nodded.
Dark Mask, answer the summon and gather with the rest of the troops of Silent World. As for you, Death Tide, you will remain in the distance during the entire incursion and help Dark Mask escape when the time comes.
Discover exclusive content at FreeWeb Novel. After hearing those words, both Atrox bow to the Scarlet King and leave the warehouse. Their destination was the same as that of the Scarlet King, but there was someone else he needed to be before that. William and Astrid were on the peak of a massive mountain, waiting. There was a sharp light in the Atrox Duke's eyes, while a sense of anxiousness appeared in the young woman. Astrid was doing her best to keep her composure. Still, it was only a matter of hours before she could get rid of her congenital disability once and for all, allowing her to finally cultivate and break free of the shackles of weakness and mortality. William saw the hope and anxiousness in his daughter's eyes, and if that man could truly heal her, he would not only fulfill this mission but would remember this kindness for the rest of his life. Suddenly, William's eyes narrowed as he looked into the distance. Soon, he saw a red figure flashing toward them, appearing in the sky above them in less than a minute. The Scarlet King stood in the sky above the duo, and his eyes showed no emotion. It was as if he was looking at two complete strangers whose lives held no meaning for him. It was impossible to match those eyes with the ones that had shown kindness and affection toward the young Atrox woman. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 464, Atomic Genetic Rewrite, The power of Otter overflowed through the Scarlet King's eyes, suppressing any sentiment he might have had toward the young woman, allowing his disguise to fool the duo. William immediately took a step forward and positioned himself between the Scarlet King and Astrid. He didn't feel a threat coming from the man and was confident he could defeat this one. Still, those red eyes glowed with willpower that conveyed a sense of certainty and resolution he believed could only exist in an emotionless monster. After a moment, and making sure the duo could sense the absence of any form of emotion in his eyes, the Scarlet King descended to the mountain's peak. His eyes grew sharp as he focused on William before turning to Astrid.
So you are the young woman my disciple is so infatuated with.
The Scarlet King paused at this point before speaking with a tone full of aloofness.
Ah, youthful love, what a waste of time. Someone who follows my teaching cannot distract himself with such useless emotions.
Astrid clenched her fists upon hearing those words. She had initially wondered why Kyne had spoken as if they might never see each other again before leaving the castle. However, now that she heard the words of the man with the red mask, it was clear that he did not approve of any kind of romantic relationship.
Enough, we are not here to speak about the relationships of young people.
William noticed his daughter's state and immediately redirected the conversation, causing a sharp silver light to appear in his eyes. The Scarlet King turned to the Atrox Duke and nodded before waving his hand, making a Tier 1 biogenetic chamber appear.
The negotiations are done, so let's not waste time. Get into the genetic chamber so I can start the process.
Astrid stared at the Scarlet King for a moment, but did not move right away, as the man did not inspire trust. The Scarlet King expected such a response, as he was playing the role of an eccentric and cold-hearted master.
Your life has no meaning to me, and I couldn't care less if you gain the ability to cultivate or not. On the other hand, harming you will incite the fury of your father and my disciple. After knowing all that, there should be no reason to worry about my intentions.
Astrid couldn't help but agree with the logic behind those words, and after receiving her father's nod, she jumped into the Tier 1 biogenetic chamber. Despite being surrounded by a strange liquid, she was not suffocated, and soon felt a force begin to scan her body to the point of analyzing her genome. William's eyes burst with silver light as he used the full power of his ego wave to monitor his daughter. If he detected any danger to Astrid's life, he would shatter the genetic chamber and save his daughter before attacking the Scarlet King with all his power. The Scarlet King could feel the ego wave of the man, but he didn't worry since it could not affect his work. Actually, the only reason he even bothered to place Astrid in the Tier 1 biogenetic chamber was to give the illusion that he was the one altering her genome and not the absolute life form system. Once everything was in place, the Scarlet King adopted a solemn expression as his ego wave burst with power and fused with the Tier 1 biogenetic chamber, as if he were ready to work. Find your next read at Freeweb Novel. System, use the Atomic Genetic Rewrite tool on the woman. Using Atomic Genetic Rewrite on the target will cost 1M Destined Force. Is Vessel sure? Although seeing the cost made the Scarlet King's eyes twitch, he clenched his teeth and gave the go-ahead. Do it. Using Atomic Genetic Rewrite on the target. Less than a second after hearing the message in his mind, the Scarlet King saw Astrid's body tremble inside the genetic chamber, and it didn't take long for the trembling to become severe convulsions. Due to her armor, one couldn't see Astrid's figure directly, but the Scarlet King's ego wave showed him how her skin began to peel off. Shock appeared in the Scarlet King's eyes as he witnessed such a gory scene, and the same happened with William, but the two managed to remain calm as they saw that her vital signs were all stable. The changes to Astrid's body grew more and more intense as her entire circulatory system broadened, and a mass of muscles and bones began to cover the area around the evolution core. The process aimed to do a total rewrite of Astrid's genome, returning her genes to the most basic state of her race. The changes in Astrid's body meant that there was a time when the Atrox Immatus race had these physical characteristics in every newborn. The Scarlet King couldn't help but be impressed by these physical characteristics. While at his level, they meant very little. They could prove immensely helpful to people who were just embarking on the path of power, ensuring the safety of their sacred organs while their bodies were still weak. Half an hour passed, and Astrid's body finally stopped convulsing. She slowly opened her eyes and exited the Tier 1 biogenetic chamber before removing the bio-Atrox armor that had covered her body. The Scarlet King's eyes widened as he saw Astrid's physical appearance after her genome returned to the most basic state of the Atrox Immatus race. Of course, he could hide those emotions thanks to the power of Oda. On the other hand, William could not hide his emotions, and the shock in his eyes was clear to everybody. Astrid noticed the look on her father was also staring at her with shock. A sense of dread overwhelmed her as she immediately took a mirror from her space ring. When she finally saw her appearance, she was left stunned. She was stunningly beautiful. The young Atrox's woman's face was small and delicate, with skin as white as snow and pointy ears. Astrid looks no different than an elf from the old world's fairy tales. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 465, Atomic Genetic Rewrite, EI. The Scarlet King was not only surprised by the young woman's immense beauty, but also shocked to find out that the Atrox Immatus race looked like that at their most basic and primitive state. While many Atrox were aesthetically appealing, nearly all of them lacked those delicate characteristics, replaced by stern and warrior-like features. While the beauty made Astrid happy, that was not the reason she went through this process. She took a deep breath and retrieved a wave crystal from her space ring, focusing on it. Hope and fear appeared in her eyes as she sent the life wave from the wave crystal into her sacred organs. William stared at his daughter, allowing a sense of hope to invade him. If this did not work, nothing could cure Astrid's congenital disability. Seconds went by, and a sense of dread and pressure assaulted everybody, but then Astrid's body trembled, and a tiny thread of sky-blue energy emerged from her body. That was Essence Wave. It was small and faded immediately, but the fact that she managed to generate it meant her evolution core worked, and she could embark on the Essence evolution path of power. Astrid could not help but shed tears as she felt the evolution core inside her body develop essence waves and use the power to generate meridians across her body, the first step in what would be a long and arduous cultivation journey. William could not contain the waves of emotions that assailed his heart either, as he would not have to see his daughter age and fade after a mere 100 years. He then turned to the Scarlet King and performed a deep bow.
I will never forget this.
Regardless of the coldness and aloof attitude of the man, he had healed his daughter, and William could not be happier.
I will remember this grace for my entire life.
Astrid also regained her composure and stood up, bowing toward the Scarlet King, tears of joy still falling from her eyes. The Scarlet King's heart was full of thrill and happiness at seeing the young Atrox woman finally break free of her shackles, but he couldn't break his facade. Not showing any emotion, he merely nodded.
It was a deal, and I was just fulfilling my part. Take your daughter back to Evernight. Once you return, we will march together to the Blood Path secret laboratory. We should arrive before Silent World's incursion begins.
William nodded and covered Astrid with his ego wave before both flashed back to Evernight. The man moved more than 100 times faster than the speed of sound, so he was able to return in less than an hour.
I am ready.
The Scarlet King's eyes narrowed as he felt the complete change in the aura of the Atrox Duke. During Astrid's genetic rewrite, there was doubt and uncertainty in William's eyes, but now he could only see killing intent and fighting will. A true warrior. That was the only description that the Scarlet King could give to the Atrox Duke. Everything was ready, and they should be going, but he looked at William for a moment before waving his hand and making the refinement cauldron appear.
There is an object I want to obtain from one of the Divine Ascension Masters. If you help me get it, I am willing to perform a 15 revolution refinement on your flesh and blood right now.
William's eyes narrowed as he heard that request. The original mission was to distract the Divine Ascension Masters from Silent World and Blood Path. If he wanted to help the Scarlet King steal something, William would be forced to make the enemy put his entire attention on him, which would be extremely dangerous.
What is it that you seek to obtain?
The Scarlet King did not say a word, but pointed his index finger to a specific part of his body, and William immediately understood what this one was after. Although going down that path was extremely dangerous, William was aware of the miraculous effect of revolution refinement after reading the Golden Book. It did not take long for determination to appear in his eyes, and he nodded. A smile full of greed appeared on the Scarlet King's face as he heard those words, and he opened the lid of the refinement cauldron, allowing William to get in before placing a 15 revolution flame. Although he had performed a 16 revolution refinement on Dark Mask and Deathtide, his proficiency had not reached 100%, and unlike with the duo, he could not afford to lose the Atrox Duke before the incursion. Explore more adventures at Freeweb Novel.
Make sure to revolve the energy around your body as fast as possible to allow the assimilation to proceed without a problem.
William heard those words in his mind, and the next second, the cauldron lid closed, and the 15 revolution flame emerged from the sphere, flooding his body both inside and out. A second later, the Atrox Duke's eyes widened as he felt waves of world energy flooding his body with overwhelming power. Without hesitation, William made his ego wave burst, using all the power of his silver force field to mobilize the energy across his body. The Scarlet King relaxed as he felt how easy it was to mobilize the energy around William after this one helped the process using his own ego wave, which had already reached the third realm of the ego eternal path of power. In just 2 hours, the world's energy stopped flooding into the cauldron, and William emerged from it the next second. His eyes could not hide his shock and awe as the state of his bones and flesh had improved. William was an extremely talented astral cultivator and built his foundation step by step with extreme focus and hard work. That allowed the power behind the flesh calamity and bone calamity to reach an overwhelming level. The memories of those tribulations and the effect they had on his flesh and bones were still clear in the Atrox's mind. For the last couple of years, William had just been improving his soul force, as he was under the pretense that his flesh and bones had already been tempered to the utmost limit of the apotheosis rank. However, the effect of the Saint Revolution refinement pushed his bones and flesh to an even higher stage. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 466, Start of the Incursion. Continue reading at Freeweb Novel.
With my foundation and the might of my ego wave, if I were to rise into the Divine Ascension rank, my power would allow me to face those at the middle stage, maybe even exchange blows with people at the late stage, those with the right to call themselves gods.
William was so excited that he spoke aloud, almost forgetting he was not alone. The Scarlet King stared at the Atrox Duke, but said nothing about this one's shock. After all, William's response made sense. Tribulation enhancement improves what is already there, and while a 15 revolution refinement might only provide a 5% upgrade to William's foundation, even a 1% improvement was shocking when you reach the peak and would translate into immense power in the future. Despite the thrill, William's willpower allowed him to regain his focus immediately, and he stared at the Scarlet King before performing a solemn nod. There was no need for words, as the man would prove his determination and gratitude with actions. After everything was in order, the Scarlet King and William flashed into the distance, and while they moved at an extremely fast speed, their auras grew more and more feeble until they vanished. Dark Mask's eyes were focused as he silently advanced with a group composed of 30 warriors. All of them were using a special amulet granted by Silent World to hide their aura as they moved closer and closer to their target. He was at the group's rear with another 21 late and peak wave kings, following 9 Apotheosis Realm Masters. Among the Apotheosis Realm Masters, there were 5 who had solemn expressions on their faces as they understood the immense danger of this mission. Yet the other 4 were calm and serene, as if this was just a walk in the park. The difference between the two groups of Apotheosis Realm Masters was not exactly the power of their cultivation base, but that the 4 with serenity in their eyes were actual members of Silent World. As one would expect from warriors who managed to rise in one of the Tier 0 dark factions that ruled the underworld of Chronos, their auras were overwhelmingly powerful. Their foundation and talent were on a completely different level than those of ordinary Apotheosis Realm Masters from Tier 1 dark factions. Leading the Apotheosis Realm Masters and Wave Kings was a woman. Gray armor covered her entire body, but it did not hide her eyes that glowed with phantom light, and being close to her would make people see illusions of hungry ghosts and bloody chains. It did not take long for the group to approach a massive waterfall near the border of the Uranus sector. One could see the water moving backward, rising into the air, generating all sorts of beautiful optic illusions in the sky. This place went by the name of Reverse Skyfall. Despite the majesty of the site, it was very weird to see people here, since not only was the density of the life wave weak, making it useless for training, but it was in the middle of regions dominated by powerful grand king beasts. Very few people knew that the reason for the low density of life wave in the area was the formation inside the hidden laboratory that drained all the energy from the surroundings, providing the people and equipment inside the laboratory with all the power they could need. Once they were less than 1,000 meters from the waterfall, the 4 Apotheosis Realm Masters from Silent World looked at each other before silently nodding and flashing forward as their energy and ego waves burst with power. Doc Mosk had been paying close attention to the people of Silent World, and as he saw the 4 of them rising into the sky and making their energy converge, his eyes widened.
God Phantom's Hand.
The 4 Silent World Apotheosis Realm members formed a square formation in the sky. From the center of this one, a gargantuan phantom hand emerged before flashing toward the waterfall with overwhelming power and momentum. Doc Mosk's eyes widened as he saw that massive phantom's hand, and he could not help but think of the demonic claw that the Scarlet King conjured. However, the God Phantom's hand was much larger, and its power was on an entirely different level, capable of harming even divine Ascension Masters. Just as everybody thought that the God Phantom hand would burst the Reverse Skyfall to pieces, a force field emerged over the surface of this one, repelling the Phantom hand. Shockwaves of phantom energy spread in every direction as the phantom hand attempted to push through the force field, but this one stood firm. A cold light appeared in the woman leading the incursion, and she glanced at the other 3 before they all bit their tongues, allowing streams of blood overflowing with vitality to enter the formation.
Crack.
Immediately, the energy from the God Phantom's hand grew stronger, causing cracks in the force field before shattering this one, no longer obstructing the spell's path.
RUMBLES.
The earth trembled as the God Phantom's hand shattered the surface of the water, revealing the hidden laboratory full of immensely advanced artifacts and with hundreds of people inside. Confusion and dread appeared in the people inside the laboratory as they saw the massive phantom arm shattering the laboratory's ceiling. A cold smile appeared on the woman with the dark armor as she clasped her hands, causing the God Phantom's hand to burst, generating a blast that set the air ablaze, sending trees flying away, and instantly killing everybody inside the laboratory whose cultivation had yet to reach the Wave King rank, while injuring everybody else. Doc Mosk had summoned his holy weapon, and ice wings covered his figure from the blast. Although he and the rest of the incursion fosse were not the target, the explosion occurred less than 1,000 meters away, so the flames reached their location. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 467, Endurance Concept. All the other Apotheosis Masters and Wave Kings from the Incursion Fosse used their treasures and wave cloaks to protect themselves from the destructive power of the blast. Once the flames began to disperse, the Wave Kings, who were part of the incursion, couldn't help but frown as the explosion had wounded them. Although the injuries wouldn't reduce their battle power, it wouldn't improve their chances of survival either. The Apotheosis Realm Masters from Silent World were aware of the effect that detonating their spell would carry, but clearly, they only saw those Wave Kings as disposable tools. The woman covered in gray armor didn't bother to even look at them before her aura burst again, unleashing a torrent of essence wave into the sky.
Attack.
Regardless of their feelings, the Apotheosis Realm Masters and Wave Kings from the Tier 1 Dark factions immediately made their energy explode as they flashed to the opening in the waterfall. The mission was simple: kill everybody and take everything. The first to reach the sea of flames that was the laboratory was a massive Atrox, nearly 2.5 meters tall, radiating vitality and exuding overwhelming strength from his entire body. No one was surprised to see the man flash into the laboratory ahead of everybody, even the members of Silent World. He was a flesh calamity apotheosis master who went by the name of Diamond Body, the leader of the Diamond Killers. Just by its name, one would get a hint of the man's narcissistic nature. Today, Diamond Body acted no different, trying to draw attention, but that was a grave mistake.
Boom.
Less than a second after flashing into the burning laboratory, Diamond World was sent flying away with an indentation in his chest and puking blood.
Defend.
A figure rose from the burning laboratory as he rallied the troops. His entire body glowed with energy as blood runes rotated around his hands and fists. A red armor covered his figure, but his helmet allowed his face to be seen, showing metallic golden skin and sharp blue eyes. Following the Atrox into the sky were dozens of figures. 7 were Apotheosis Realm Masters, while the rest were Wave Kings. The woman covered in gray armor immediately focused on the man with golden skin, and a killing intent burst from her heart.
Sarand. Innate.
The leaders of both sides immediately recognized each other, and without hesitation, they flashed toward the sky as they unleashed their most powerful attacks. Ine unleashed a blast of phantom energy, but Saran only responded with fists charged with immense power and blood energy.
BOOO.
Find more to read at Freeweb Novel. The clash between the two marked the beginning. The next second, all the warriors from both parties began to fight with all they had, full of killing intent. Dark Mask kept calm even among the bloodshed and wild energies flooding the sky and earth. His eyes were full of killing intent as he faced the peak Wave King from Bloodpath, but it was all for show. Unlike the rest of the warriors from the Tier 1 Dark factions, who were using all their power to excel in the incursion and make an impression on the people of Silent World, he knew this mission was doomed to fail, and the one who would reap the profits would be someone else. Still, Dark Mask didn't waste his time. He constantly focused on the battlefield of the Apotheosis Realm Masters, paying particular attention to the battle between the leaders from both sides, as any information he got could help the leader.
Where do you think you're looking to?
The opponent's lack of interest in the fight infuriated the Peak Wave King from Bloodpath. He burst the blood energy inside his body before shattering an ice shield and lunging toward the Essence Cultivator. Dark Mask saw how the enemy lunged toward him and sent a powerful punch that could severely harm him. His left ice wing moves incredibly fast, positioning itself between the Peak Wave King Atrox's fist and his face.
HMPH.
The Peak Wave King from Bloodpath sneered as he saw that defense, and he was ready to blast it to pieces with his punch.
Boom.
A wave of blood energy blasted everywhere as the Peak Wave King's fist landed on the ice wing, but shock appeared in his eyes as he realized his attack hadn't moved Dark Mask a single step. The Atrox couldn't believe the defensive power of the ice wings, and before he could perform another attack, an ice tail slashed at his head, making his brain tremble inside his skull and sending him flying away. The rest of the Atrox on the Wave King battlefield were shocked to see the defensive power of Dark Mask, many wondering if it was the power of the Ice Law. No one saw how Doc Mosk's eyes were burning with blue light as he had set his ego wave ablaze to summon the Endurance Concept's power. That was the concept that Doc Mosk was able to draw power from, thanks to his alter ego affinity to this one. While it lacked offensive might, it improved his wing's endurance to an overwhelming level. Although Doc Mosk's defense was impressive, many just took it as a special skill. After all, he was once a Water Tribulation Apotheosis Master, so they soon put their focus back on their fight. Doc Mosk could relax once he saw people's attention moving away from him and continued fighting his opponent, focusing not on victory, but on gaining time and conserving his power. The battle between both forces was even at the beginning, but it didn't take long for the people from Silent World to take the lead. Not only did they have the numerical advantage, but the Wave Kings from Blood Path had endured great injuries during the blast of God Phantom's hand. Unfortunately for the warriors that formed the incursion force of Silent World, just as it seemed that victory was inevitable, and they were ready to massacre the wounded enemies, an overwhelming dark force field flooded the earth and sky. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 468, Divine Ascension Masters Fight. A smile appeared on the faces of the warriors of Blood Path, while dread filled the hearts of those from Silent World due to the killing intent they felt in the ego wave. Things just went from bad to worse as the next second, the surroundings began to change, and everybody saw how the ground turned into a massive pool of blood as red clouds filled the sky.
HMPH, you dirty apes from Silent World, do you really think that you can attack the domains of Blood Path and survive?
Along with those words came a young woman who calmly descended from the sky. A white armor covered her body, but she did not hide her beautiful face and long dark hair. Her eyes were full of bloodlust, and a thin blade of blood was in her right hand. Everybody, including the 4 members of Silent World, adopted solemn expressions as they stared at the woman since she was a true powerhouse, a Divine Ascension Master, and they were all in her domain. The Divine Ascension Master's eyes immediately went to the strongest warrior from Silent World, Ine. She did not say a word before waving her hand. Ine was an Earth Tribulation Apotheosis Master, and her talent and power allowed her to fight against those at the peak of the Apotheosis rank. But a somber expression appeared on her face as she saw the massive arc of blood falling towards her. Even if she survived, she would end up with severe injuries. Just as the arc of blood was about to fall on Ine, a figure pierced right through the blood domain, leaving a hole in it before standing in front of the woman and sending a powerful strike upwards. The newcomer's entire body glowed with golden light, and his palm strike managed to shatter the arc of blood to pieces. His whole body was covered in Atrox's bioarmor, but it did not hide his black eyes nor the dark golden light emanating from it.
Ha, Sabina, don't you think it is beneath you to attack Apotheosis Realm Masters?
The woman in white armor recognized the golden Atrox and her eyes glowed with killing intent, but there was also a hint of caution. Just like her, the man was a Divine Ascension Master, and this would not be their first clash. Find more chapters on Freeweb novel.
Zaman, do you understand the weight of your actions? Do you think that the Blood God will allow Silent World to trample over us?
Sabina's voice was cold as she stared at the man, and all the other members of Silent World as if they were already dead. The Apotheosis Realm Masters from Silent World could not hide their dread as they heard the name of the Blood God. After all, that was a legendary figure who had survived for thousands of years and fought against the current Atrox Immortus race emperor. Unlike everybody else who cowered at the mention of the Blood God, Zaman showed a smile full of disdain and looked at the woman with no fear at all.
The Blood God is powerful and dangerous, yet no one has seen him for the last 100 years. It is as if he had suddenly vanished.
Sabina's eyes narrowed as she heard the words from Zaman, and the true reason for this attack became clear. They wanted to test their bottom line and the Blood God's response. Although that realization perturbed Sabina, soon darkness flooded her eyes as she smiled toward the Divine Ascension Master of Silent World.
You won't have to worry about the Blood God's vengeance, as you and the rest of your mongrels will perish here.
The woman immediately made her energy explode, and the entire blood domain that covered nearly 10,000 meters fused back into her thin blade. Zaman immediately adopted a solemn attitude since the woman was not an easy opponent. Without hesitation, his energy burst, generating waves of golden light that extended for kilometers.
Crimson Arcana.
The first one to attack was Sabina, and she released all the power of the massive blood domain in a single strike, generating waves of blood-infused arcs of energy that seemed capable of slicing through anything, moving at a simply overwhelming speed. Zaman frowned as he saw the thousands of arcs of blood energy, since they were also targeting the rest of the Apotheosis Realm Masters from Silent World.
Auric Shield.
All the golden light emerging from Zaman's body morphed into a dome that deflected energy and physical attacks, protecting him and the rest of the Apotheosis Masters.
Boom. 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 Boom.
The arcs of blood energy clashed against the dome of golden light, generating hundreds of explosions around it, but it endured. Once the last arc of blood energy faded, Zaman clasped his hands, gathering all the light between his palms before opening them and generating 10 golden spears. Zaman did not wait a second before grasping one of the spears, infusing it with his astral wave to make it incredibly dense and heavy, before thrusting it with all his power toward the enemy.
SHHHHH.
Sabina's eyes widened as she saw the speed and power of that spear, and she knew she would not be able to dodge it. So she pointed her blade forward, unleashing a vortex of blood that soon became a protective shield.
Blood Barrier.
A massive shockwave spread across the sky as the spear of light clashed against the blood shield, and the power was not much weaker than the one unleashed by the explosion of God Phantom's hand. Apotheosis Masters and Wave Kings watched the clash between the two Divine Ascension Masters and could not hide the awe, admiration, and desire in their eyes. That power was the goal of all great warriors from Ether, reaching the divine and shedding away mortality. Sabina's eyes burst with darkness as she redirected the spear of light away, before rising hundreds of thousands of meters into the sky and waving her thin saber down, this time generating a tsunami of blood that threatened to drown the entire battlefield.
Blood Tsunami.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 469, Sneak Attack on a Divine Ascension Master.
Blood Tsunami.
Although the attack had as its primary target the Divine Ascension Masters from Silent World, it was so massive that it would reach every Apotheosis Master and Wave King on both sides. Sabina did not have problems killing her own men if it granted her victory. Zaman did not lose focus, and his hands moved at such a shocking speed that he managed to throw all 9 spears of light simultaneously, making them clash with the tsunami of blood. A massive explosion of blood and golden light covered the sky and earth, blocking the view of all the Apotheosis Realm Masters and Wave Kings. By the time they regained their sight, all of them looked to the sky. An unparalleled shock appeared in their eyes as they saw Zaman's arm piercing Sabina's chest. The Divine Ascension Master from Silent World had managed to pierce through the explosion using the strength of his body, reaching the woman and unleashing a ferocious attack that seemed to give him victory. Sabina's eyes were also full of shock as she gazed at the arm piercing her chest, but soon a cold smile appeared on her face. Zaman's eyes widened as his instincts began to scream danger, but before he could do anything, the woman transformed into a mass of blood that entangled him, restricting his movements. Less than a second later, a figure appeared among the red cloud, and there was no one else but Sabina. While Zaman had pierced through the explosion to reach his target and land a lethal blow, Samina had left a clone made of her own blood to distract the Divine Ascension Master from Silent World so she could fire her paralyze the moment of this one. Before Zaman could get rid of the blood restrictions, Samina raised her thin blood saber and gathered all her energy in it.
Eclipse Edge.
Sabina unleashed a crescent-shaped wave of blood energy capable of cleaving the sky. Zaman clenched his teeth as he made his astral wave burst with all the power he could muster, and dense golden light covered every corner of his body.
B-O-O-F.
The crescent-shaped wave of blood energy clashed with Zaman, pushing him into the ground before unleashing a massive blast that surpassed the power of the old world's nuclear weapons. The ground was set ablaze, and everything in a 3,000-meter radius was obliterated. Yet, despite the massive explosion and the overwhelming power behind the attack, Zaman took less than 3 seconds to emerge from the crashing zone and return to the fray. There was a deep cut on his chest and burning wounds all over his body, but his eyes glowed with killing intent as he flashed toward Sabina. The Divine Ascension Master from Bloodpath was not surprised to see Zaman survive. After all, a Divine Ascension astral cultivator's vitality was no weaker than a small star, and even if their hearts were punctured, they could still keep fighting. Nevertheless, she had managed to land a powerful attack on the enemy, giving her the upper hand so victory would be hers as long as she did not make a mistake. Explosions filled the sky as a golden flash and red flash clashed repeatedly, unleashing waves of energy that not even the Apotheosis Masters from Bloodpath or Silent World dared to get close to. The battlefield of Wave Kings and Apotheosis Masters had frozen after the arrival of Sabina and Zaman. Yet, now that the duo engaged in a long battle with no apparent victory, it reignited, and soon explosions covered dozens of kilometers around the hidden laboratory. Although the incursion had advanced into something much more significant with the arrival of the 2 Divine Ascension Masters, its goal was still to loot everything inside the laboratory and kill anyone in their path, improving the power of Silent World and weakening Bloodpath. The battle between both sides continued for over 30 minutes, and death was already emerging. Although no Apotheosis Realm Master had perished, 9 Wave Kings had already died, 4 from Silent World and 5 from Bloodpath. Although those deaths would seriously impact the distribution of power among Tier 1 factions, the Apotheosis Masters showed little care. As for Sabina and Zaman, those deaths did not even register in their calculations. The fight between the 2 Divine Ascension Masters was reaching its peak as both of them were riddled with deep wounds. Their momentum kept increasing until finally, they stood less than 100 meters away from each other. Although such a close distance was dangerous for Sabina, it would also enhance the destructive power of her attack. She clenched her teeth and did not move back, remaining steady as she waved her blood blade down.
Eclipse Edge.
Zaman saw the crescent-shaped wave of blood energy coming at him with immense power, and he gathered all his astral wave and golden light in his right arm, releasing a concentrated burst of burning energy.
Solar Flare Strike.
Arcs of lightning and chaotic energy spread everywhere as the fist burning with golden energy clashed against the arc of blood energy, making the sky tremble. The power the duo was unleashing was genuinely overwhelming, each using all they had to kill the other.
BOOMMMs.
Discover exclusive content at Freeweb Novel. In the end, Sabina's Eclipse Edge and Zaman's Solar Flare strike ended in a draw, leading to a massive explosion that sent both Divine Ascension Masters hurtling in opposite directions with blood leaking from their mouths. Sabina used all her power to calm the raging flow of her blood and stabilize her wounds as she attempted to regain control over her body. Suddenly, her eyes widened as an individual materialized behind her. The newcomer was a towering Atrox covered in oceanic-like armor. His eyes glowed with silver light and were full of killing intent as he struck the woman's back. There was no way to regain control over her body fast enough or counterattack, so Sabina could only make the blood energy inside her body burst, enduring a severe backlash in order to summon a revolving cocoon of blood that protected her body. The Divine Ascension Master was sure that the revolving blood would protect her, as its defensive power was phenomenal, which was why there was such shock in her eyes as she felt the punch pierce through it. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 470, Carving a Bloody Path I. Everything grew worse for Sabina as the moment the punch landed on her back, she felt powerful vibrations coursing through her body, wreaking havoc in her already wounded internal organs. Just as Sabina thought the punch would send her flying away, the man used his left arm to embrace her before striking once again, this time with an open palm on her shoulder. Unlike the previous strike that spread vibrations inside her body, this palm concentrated all the vibrational power on her shoulder, shattering her shoulder's path and destabilizing the energy defenses in that area. Sabina felt her instincts screaming with danger stronger than ever, and she tightened her grip on her blood blade. She was in no position to perform a slash with the weapon, but as an essence cultivator, she could redirect the energy from the blade, making small arcs of bloody energy emerge from her body. All those arcs landed on the Atrox covered in oceanic armor since this one was embracing the woman, but he clenched his teeth and endured the damage as he grabbed Sabina's right wrist and extended the arm as if he wanted to rip it out. Sabina saw how the Atrox in oceanic armor extended her arm that was holding the thin blood blade, but while her body was not formidably strong, it was not so weak that someone could rip her an extremity so easily. The woman kept firing arcs of blood energy toward the Atrox, and she was sure this one would not be able to hold on for long. But all of a sudden, a figure descended from the sky at a shocking speed with a red saber in his hand, charged with darkness.
SHHHH.
The sound of wind splitting apart echoed across the battlefield as the red saber hacked toward Sabina's right shoulder, severing the arm. From the moment the Atrox with oceanic armor appeared to the red saber severing Sabina's right arm, less than 3 seconds had passed. So, by the time the Apotheosis Realm Masters and Wave Kings noticed the change in the sky, the woman had already lost her arm. The Atrox in oceanic armor was none other than William, and the one who descended from the sky, keeping a long-range spell charged into the blade to enhance its power while unleashing the might of the Sundering concept, was the Scarlet King. Unlike his usual attire made of bandages, a scarlet robe, and a red mask, right now, the entire body of the Scarlet King was covered in golden armor. The armor was a golden artifact for Wave King Essence cultivators. Thanks to the immense purity and density of his Essence Wave, the Scarlet King could use the artifact despite being a Wave champion. However, the artifact was weaker than the Scarlet King's body, and he used it to hide his identity since many people in Silent World wanted him dead due to his attacks on Tier 1 Dark factions. William immediately sent the severed limb toward the Scarlet King before moving away from Sabina, who began to burn her life force, generating a whirlwind of blood energy around her body, threatening to shred everything around her. The Scarlet King grabbed the arm and immediately felt how the energy of it was growing chaotic, and the same could be said of the thin blade of blood. You can manipulate matter when your willpower reaches the third realm of the ego eternal path of power. Even if a piece of your ego wave is away from its main core, you can still control it as long as the distance is not too great and nothing is blocking it. Sabina's eyes burned with rage inside the whirlwind of blood as she focused on her severed arm, trying to make it burst before making the thin blood saber and space ring come back to her. The Scarlet King could not sever the connection of Sabina with her arm or the artifact she engraved with her ego wave, but he did not lose his calm, and a smile appeared on his face as the entire arm faded the next second. Shock appeared in Sabina's eyes as she felt the connection to her arm and artifacts vanish. Even if the man put them inside dimensional storage, she should still be able to control them. The confusion in the Divine Ascension Master was understandable since there was no way she could know that the Scarlet King had the demonic devourer dimension. The Scarlet King did not care about the woman's shock, and after making sure the sky flame did not consume the arm, space ring, and weapon, he flashed with all his power toward the burning laboratory. Sabina's eyes burned with killing intent as she gazed at the figure flashing away, while Zaman's eyes were full of confusion and doubt as he stared at the newcomer. The Scarlet King could feel the piercing gaze of the Divine Ascension Masters on him, but he did not falter for a second since that could mean death. He pushed with all his strength toward the laboratory. Enjoy more content from Freeweb Novel. Unfortunately for him, the laboratory of Bloodpath was right in the middle of the Apotheosis Realm battlefield, and he would have to push through it if he wanted to reach it. His eyes burned as the ego wave burst with all his power, unleashing all the power of the concept of sundering. the Apotheosis Masters from Silent World did not know how to respond to the man in the golden armor, as they knew nothing about him other than he and the man in oceanic armor were not part of Blood Path. However, for the Apotheosis Masters of Blood Path, there was only one path: kill the man and retrieve Sabina's arm and treasures, or else they would have to face the woman's wrath for letting this one escape. The Scarlet King saw how some Apotheosis Masters managed to push away their enemies and flashed toward him, full of killing intent and power. If they were at their peak, the Scarlet King would have never been able to push through them, but thanks to their wounds, he had a chance. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 471, Carving a Bloody Path. Flashes of golden light began to appear in the Scarlet King's eyes as he pushed the flow to its peak, focusing on the 3 Apotheosis Masters marching toward him. 2 were Flesh Calamity's astral cultivators, while the last was a Water Tribulation essence cultivator. The 2 Flesh Calamity astral cultivators made their waves burst as they lunged toward the Scarlet King, one firing a fiery blow toward his face, while the other swung a massive axe toward his waist. Normally, an essence cultivator would maintain distance from the enemies, but the Scarlet King kept pushing forward until he was right before them. Just as the fist and weapon were about to reach him, shadows covered his figure, allowing him to twist his body and pass between the spaces formed by the 2 attacks. Shock appeared in the Flesh Calamity Apotheosis Masters as they saw the flawless movements of the Scarlet King and could not understand how someone could reach that level of martial skill. Before they could turn around and continue their attack, 2 blasts of shadows landed on them, pushing them into the sky. The Scarlet King had just sent the Jew away with a blast of shadow from slaughter when his eyes focused on the Water Tribulation Apotheosis Master. The woman seemed to be a master of the metal law as her essence wave turned into dozens of sharp metallic claws that flashed toward him. As he saw those claws, the Scarlet King unleashed the blood nails, and the next second, the demonic phantom came into play. Immediately, he infused the radiance of life and radiance of power into the avatar of darkness and blood, allowing it to clash head-on with the woman's spell. Sabina and Zaman gazed at the man covered in golden artifacts marching into the laboratory, but neither made a move. The reason was simple. The man in the oceanic armor stood in their path, and they could feel the immense power in this one. Sabina was severely injured, having lost her right arm and weapon, and she lacked the power to overcome the man in oceanic armor. As for Zaman, he had no reason to interfere, as that would incite the man in oceanic armor to fight him and could give an opening for Sabina to attack him. As for the Jew assaulting the man in oceanic armor together, that was impossible. Neither trusted the other since less than a minute ago, they had attempted to kill each other. William's eyes focused on the Divine Ascension Masters, and while it seemed the Jew would not chase after the Scarlet King, he would not lower his guard until the mission was over. Vibrational waves were emerging from his body, allowing the Atrox Duke to perceive the slightest movements from the Divine Ascension Masters. Find exclusive stories on Freeweb Novel.
BOOOMMMMMs.
An explosion of darkness and blood flooded the Apotheosis realm battlefield as the metal claws burst the demonic phantom to pieces. Still, before the Water Tribulation Apotheosis Masters could be happy about it, the man in the golden armor pierced through the flames and appeared in front of her with the red saber bursting with darkness. The flames and the explosion left the golden armor full of cracks, and it seemed it would crumble at any second, yet the Scarlet King's body did not lose momentum. Shock appeared in the woman's eyes as she could not believe what she saw. An essence wave cultivator should not have been able to pierce through that explosion. There was no way she could know that the Scarlet King's body was as strong as a golden artifact, and while the explosion and flames wounded him, it did not stop him. The Scarlet King's ego wave was set ablaze, allowing the power of the concept of sundering to push the might of the slaughter to a whole new level and sever the Water Tribulation Apotheosis Master in half. When the Apotheosis Masters from the Blood Path saw how the man in the golden mask managed to sunder the Water Tribulation Apotheosis Master in half, they could not believe it, and all those eager to intercept him began to hesitate. While Sabina's wrath was something all the Apotheosis Masters feared, she would not kill them, but intervening in the man's path might cost them their lives. The hesitation allowed the Scarlet King to stall the woman's body and push forward, nearing the entrance to the laboratory. However, just as he was about to reach it, a figure appeared in his path. Sauron stood in the broken ceiling that led to the laboratory, and the blood runes burned with power around his fists. He was the strongest of the apotheosis masters of the blood path, and, as such, could not afford to let the man escape after wounding the divine ascension master. The Scarlet King's eyes narrowed as he saw Sauron in his path. Not only was the man a bone calamity apotheosis master, but he was also extremely talented and used skills that allowed him to unleash an overwhelming battle power. Luckily for the Scarlet King, Sauron consumed much of his power during the previous fights and was severely wounded to the point that he could no longer use Wave Burst. All that granted a chance to the Scarlet King to face the Bone Calamity Cultivator. Still, if he wanted to win, he would have to make sacrifices. I hope it can resist at least a second. The Scarlet King's eyes glowed with resolution as he again charged a Shadow Arc in slaughter, leaving the spell in the weapon to enhance its destructive power. He flashed with all his speed and power toward the Bone Calamity Apotheosis Master, ready to unleash all he had in the next attack. Sauron's eyes narrowed, and he did not underestimate the enemy. He had seen the speed and power of this one and was ready. All the blood runes gathered around his right fist, and he made them revolve with even greater speed before flashing forward. It happened just as they were less than 100 meters away from each other.
Thumpy.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 472, Carving a Bloody Path, EI.
Thumpy.
A powerful heartbeat echoed across the battlefield like a bomb full of energy and power. Read new chapters at Freeweb Novel. Sauron's eyes widened as he saw the Scarlet King flash toward him at a speed nearly 3 times faster. It was not just impulse. The man's body, arms, and weapon moved exponentially faster to the point he could barely keep up. A sense of dread assaulted the Bone Calamity Apotheosis Master as he was taken by surprise by the sudden burst in speed. His first thought was to put some distance between the two, so he sent his fist forward, trying to push the Scarlet King away. Unfortunately for Sauron, the Scarlet King could predict all his movements with the flow, dodging the fist and hacking toward the Atrox's neck with slaughter. The Scarlet King's eyes widened as Slaughter managed to sever half of Sauron's neck, but was stopped in the middle, as he could not sever the spine. Clearly, the level of refinement the man's bones had obtained was formidable, and not even a holy weapon could sever it without immense strength. Having half of your neck severed was an extremely serious wound, but Sauron knew he could survive if he managed to push the Scarlet King away. But before he could move his fists, the Scarlet King fired the Shadow Arc that he had contained inside the weapon.
ZNNNNN.
Sauron's eyes were still full of disbelief as his head was separated from his body, and even in his last moments, he could not believe he had perished like that. The Scarlet King could not stop the blood from flowing through his lips, and his entire body trembled due to the immense pain that assaulted him as the third gear put so much pressure on his heart that it reopened the wounds. Had it not been for the healing from the 15th Revolution refinement, the Scarlet King's body would have collapsed immediately. Using Usurapham to take Sauron by surprise was a dangerous bet, but it paid off, and he just clenched his teeth as he sent the man's corpse and his belongings into the devouring dimension before flashing forward. The entrance to the laboratory was already in front of him, and the pseudo-multidimensional scan force field had located the intercontinental teleportation formation. As soon as he stepped into it, the formation would activate and send him to the Hyperion continent.
So you are the infamous Scarlet King.
However, just as the Scarlet King was about to reach his goal, he heard a voice and saw a woman in gray armor emerge from the shadows of the burning laboratory. She was none other than Ine, and her aura was full of killing intent. Everybody could hear those words and immediately understood why Ine would block the man's path despite this one having wreaked havoc on the people of the Blood Path, who were supposed to be her enemies. Everybody in Silent World already knew about the Scarlet King by the tales of the survivors and clearly wanted the man's death. At first, they did not recognize him due to the golden armor, but as they heard Inae's words and remembered his spells, it was clear they were the same person. Zamin's eyes glowed with killing intent as he heard that name, but he did not move and simply watched with a smile. The Scarlet King was strong, but had suffered severe wounds and had not recovered from the backlash of the technique used to kill Sauron. She seems ready to use her secret attack. I guess it is over for the man. William had been paying attention to the Scarlet King as well and knew the state of the man, but there was nothing he could do since if he were to interfere, the two Divine Ascension Masters would also make their move. The Scarlet King clenched his teeth as he saw the woman in his path, but there was no fear in his eyes as he was ready to push forward, using everything he had. As long as he reached the teleportation formation, he could always find a way to heal himself later. Darkness and shadows overflowed through Slaughter as he prepared to attack the woman with every last ounce of energy, triggering Usura Farm one final time. Inae knew she had the upper hand, but she knew the man was full of surprise and did not want to follow Sauron's path. So, before they could get into striking distance, she locked eyes with the Scarlet King and formed a square with her hands.
Phantom invasion.
Inae's power exploded as all her essence wave fused into her mind before an invisible force field was fired from her hands. Although most of the Wave Kings did not understand Inae's spell, the Apotheosis Master and the trio in the high sky knew it was a soul invasion spell. These spells were incredibly hard to master, and it was easy to make a mistake and suffer a severe backlash, but their power was immense, and in terms of speed, they were nearly instantaneous. When Sabina, Zamin, and William saw the invisible soul invasion spell reach the Scarlet King, everybody thought things were over. The battle was indeed over once Inae's soul invasion spell reached the Scarlet King. However, unlike what everybody expected, the defeated one was not the Scarlet King. The man barely frowned when the soul invasion spell landed on him, but Inae's head exploded like a balloon full of blood. Of all the attacks that could be used against the Scarlet King, the worst type were soul invasion spells. If you were to target his mind and will, it would be a fair clash, but if the target were his soul dimension, everything would be over instantly. When Inae's soul force reached into the Scarlet King's soul dimension, intending to destabilize it and harm him, the golden humanate in the deepest part of the dimension simply snapped his finger, and Inae's soul burst to pieces. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 473, Carving a Bloody Path Iv. Apex could instantly overpower the soul of an alien entity like the Astral Blood Beast, so there was no way a mere Apotheosis Realm Master could pose even the slightest resistance against him. Sabina, Zamin, and William could not believe what they had just seen, nor could the Apotheosis Realm Masters and Wave Kings from both sides, who were frozen by the shocking sight. The Scarlet King was surprised by Inae performing a soul invasion spell. Yet the moment she did it, he immediately lowered his spirit defenses, allowing her to reach his soul dimension easily. He remembered what happened to the Astral Blood Beast's soul, and while Apex told him it would only be once, he was not the same naive boy from before. Of course, the Scarlet King knew it was a dangerous bet, but he trusted his instinct and again succeeded. To be honest, the Scarlet King was surprised that her head would burst like a balloon full of blood. However, he did not hesitate before storing her body and belongings and flashing into the laboratory.
Don't let him escape.
Zamin shouted, and he flashed down with all his power. The sudden outburst of the Divine Ascension Master surprised everybody. If I let the assassin of his granddaughter escape, that old man would flay me alive. Sabina did not know the reason for Zamin's killing intent since she could not read this one's mind, but she would take advantage of it and flash down as well. William saw the duo flashing toward the burning laboratory and clenched his fists. Fighting two Divine Ascension Masters would be extremely dangerous, but the Atrox Duke was ready to bet his life to keep his word. Luckily for William, a message reached his mind the next second, and he smiled before focusing solely on Sabina and allowing Zamin to carry on. Zaman was surprised to see that the Atrox in oceanic armor did not bother to obstruct his path. Still, he did not waste his time with useless thoughts and made his way to the laboratory. Unfortunately for Zaman, just as he was about to reach the laboratory, he felt a powerful fluctuation in space. And the next second, the presence of the Scarlet King vanished.
What?
Zaman was aware of an intercontinental teleportation formation in the laboratory. Still, this one was under all kinds of safe locks and protocols, so no one but the people of the Blood Path could use it. He could not fathom how the Scarlet King triggered it in a few seconds. Sabina was just as shocked as Zaman, since even the people inside the laboratory did not have the right to trigger the teleportation formation, only the higher-ups of Blood Path. None of the Divine Ascension Masters could imagine there was a tool like the sub-quantum hacking that could trigger the intercontinental teleportation formation from hundreds of meters away.
Damn it.
Zaman shouted with rage, since there was no way he could catch the Scarlet King now, and soon his eyes turned to the Atrox in oceanic armor in the sky. He would have to respond to Anae's grandfather, and only by bringing that person would he save himself from punishment. William felt Zaman's eyes on him, but he only smiled. It would not be hard for him to escape, since Sabina could barely keep up with him due to her injuries, but he just kept pressuring the woman. Zaman's eyes narrowed as he saw the calm in the man in the oceanic armor, and just as he was about to flash to this one, his eyes widened as he looked into the distance, toward Evernite. Just now, he felt the gaze of a mighty warrior focusing on their location.
A god of Evernite.
Although they were in the periphery of the Saturn sector, and there were hundreds of thousands of kilometers to Evernite, a god could cover that distance in less than a minute. Zaman clenched his teeth, but there was nothing he could do.
Everyone retreat.
Continue your adventure with Freeweb. After shouting those words, Zaman flashed into the distance, not caring about anyone else. The warriors that formed part of the Silent World's incursion were taken by surprise, but none thought of remaining on the battlefield and ran away the next second. The Apotheosis Masters and Wave Kings of Blood Path felt that something was wrong and they should leave as well, but Sabina was locked in battle with the man in oceanic armor, and if they were to escape, who knew what would happen to them in the future?
All of you attack this man.
Sabina shouted, and her voice was cold, making it clear what would happen to those who disobeyed her.
A god of Evernite will arrive in a few seconds. If you escape now, you might survive. If not, then all of you will die.
William was a great general and knew how to manipulate the enemy's hearts. Sabina might escape if they were to attack him, so he offered them the chance to live. The Apotheosis Masters and Wave Kings immediately dispersed in all directions after hearing those words. None of them would die to help escape someone who would sacrifice all of them without a second thought. Sabina saw with overwhelming rage how all the warriors escaped, but she had more pressing matters right now. William was too strong, and she could not shake him off. Fear appeared in her heart as the powerful presence felt closer and closer. The woman used all her power and skills, but her wounds were too severe, and in the end, a figure appeared in the sky with an aura so immense that it seemed she could cover the sun. William finally relaxed as he saw the woman with dark bio-armor and golden wings in the sky.
Duke William Severus humbly greets Her Highness Goddess Inopolis.
The Atrox goddess glanced at William and softly nodded, before turning to the wounded Sabina with coldness as a golden flame appeared in her eyes.
Resist and I will kill you.
Sabina clenched her teeth with rage and frustration, but ultimately, she only lowered her head and gave up. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 474, Meeting Again. Millions of kilometers away from the Saturn sector, in an entirely different continent not dominated by the Atrox Immortus race, was a swamp. There was nothing remarkable about this place, as the density of the life wave was mediocre, and the wave beasts were very weak. However, today, in this insignificant swamp, a strong perturbation in space shook the sky, and blue light illuminated the Earth, just so the next second, a figure would appear. Find your next adventure on Freeweb. The Scarlet King puked a mouthful of blood as he appeared in the swamp. Despite the immense pain that assaulted him, he clenched his teeth before striking the ground, making it burst with darkness and shatter this nexus of Blood Path's intercontinental teleportation formation. Immediately after that, the Scarlet King took out all the treasures from the demonic devouring dimension before allowing the Sky Flame to consume the corpses of Metal Law Apotheosis Master, Saran, Ine, and Sabina's arm. He finally stabilized his wounds, thanks to the streams of energy and vitality flooding his body.
The
The Scarlet King burst into laughter. He reached the Chronos continent, all bloody and mangled in the last stretch of his life. Still, he managed not only to survive but thrive, rising all the way to the late wave champion in the Essence Evolution path of power, killing powerful Apotheosis Masters and severing the arm of a Divine Ascension cultivator.
Clap, clap, clap.
Just as the Scarlet King was using the immense vitality he obtained from the corpses, he heard the sound of clapping and turned to the side, just for shock to appear in his eyes. The Scarlet King's shock and confusion were understandable since the person who had just shown up before him was a human elder with gray hair and a big belly, boasting a calm smile on his face. He was none other than the bizarre old man who had opened the Scarlet King's mind to the possibility of dual cultivation. It was shocking enough to see this one shortly after he arrived in Chronos, but to see the person again right after appearing in the Hyperion continent, home of the Deus Bahamut race, was simply incredible.
How?
The Scarlet King could not help but utter that question as he did not understand how the old man appeared here out of the blue as if he was waiting for him. It was impossible for this to be due to some random chance. The old man continued smiling before sitting in the swamp, yet his clothes did not get wet. He was not using any type of foss, and it was as if the soil and water refused to dirty his robes.
There is no need to worry, young man. I won't harm you. Actually, I cannot harm you.
As he heard those words, a strange light appeared in the Scarlet King's eyes. Not wanting to do something and being unable to were two very different things.
Just who are you? I am just an old man, and you are a boy who has closed his heart.
The Scarlet King immediately clenched his fists as he heard those words. He was a master of order, having utter control over his emotions, yet the old man disturbed his heart. Nevertheless, he soon regained focus and looked at the old man with a detached gaze.
I am the king of my destiny, and any emotion that intervenes in my path to the peak is severed. My willpower remains strong against all adversity and impervious to any pain. I don't need anyone's approval or understanding, as I know my path is right.
A complicated expression appeared on the old man's face as he heard the words of the Scarlet King.
What if the entire world were to stand in your path? Then I will scorch the earth and set the sky on fire.
The Scarlet King's eyes were resolute, and there was not a single shred of hesitation in them. A sense of absolute resolution could be felt from the bottom of his soul, and there was no doubt he would burn the world if it were to stand in his path. As he heard the Scarlet King's answer and saw the cold resolution in those eyes, a sad smile appeared on the old man's face, and he could not help but sigh.
I expected the barrier around your heart to weaken now that you were no longer in an enemy continent, but it seems that will not be the case.
The old man stared at the Scarlet King for a long time before waving his hand and making all sorts of painting materials appear.
Is it okay with you if I were to make a portrait?
The Scarlet King's eyes narrowed at the odd request of the man and would have normally refused, but in the end, he nodded.
You have opened my horizons and granted me a small lucky chance in the form of tea, so if that is your desire, go ahead.
The old man nodded and began to work as the Scarlet King simply remained sitting in the swamp, using the vitality and energy from the Sky Flame to heal the wounds on his body and heart. An hour passed, and while the Scarlet King continued healing his wounds, the old man stopped working on the portrait. The old man turned it around, allowing the Scarlet King to see it. In it was the picture of a man with a red mask and a scarlet robe. He was in the sky of a destroyed city, with billions worshipping him as if he were a divine entity. The only response those billions of souls worship him were emotionless eyes. As he saw that picture, a sharp light appeared in the Scarlet King's eyes. The way he was depicted in the portrait was that of a supreme overlord, an entity that people could only worship and never get close to. It was as if he stood above everything and everyone, completely alone. For some reason, the Scarlet King could not help but think about his past life, as that was the perfect representation of the state of existence he witnessed in that long dream. He did not know how to feel about it. While he was not an emotionless monster, and there were people he really cared about, such as Zarak, Shura, Astrid, Levi, and many more, it was true that everyone outside of his life matrix could not ignite a lasting emotional response. The old man waved his hand, and the portrait floated to the Scarlet King until it was right before him.
Keep it. There will be a time when you can find the key to a new path in it. Whether you want to take it or not, it will be your choice.
The Scarlet King took his eyes away from the portrait, but when he looked up, the old man had already vanished. His gaze returned to the picture, and he stared at it for a long time before finally sending it to his space ring. Although the old man was a disturbing entity, he was also full of mystery, and the Scarlet King wanted to know more about him. There was no reason to throw away the portrait, which could contain clues about his true identity. After that, he remained in the swamp in silence, using the blood vitality and energy to improve his condition, making sure to regain his peak before marching out. The Scarlet King's knowledge about the Hyperion continent was shallow, and he had no idea where he was, so he would regain his strength before making a move. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 475, The Great Cataclysm, I. Right now, in the sky of the collapsing lightning sector stood the collapsing lightning duke and the first collapsing lightning pillar. The aura of each was so immense that it could eclipse the sun. Usually, the duo would contain their auras as the power of these ones would make ordinary people faint, but this time, they unleashed it all. 8 immensely powerful figures stood a few dozen meters beneath the duo. These were the 8 collapsing lightning pillars of the collapsing lightning sector, and light glowed in each of their eyes, full of killing intent and murderous wrath. Hundreds of wave kings and dozens of thousands of wave champions gazed at those figures in the sky. They all stood in formation, and their energies seemed to reach a certain level of harmonization. That was not all, since the level of organization among them got to the point where they even breathed in unison. Every person in this fosse was a seasoned warrior who had experienced the bloodshed of war with their own eyes and hands, risking their lives over and over again. Among the wave champions were faces that Cain would find familiar, as there were Levi, Lurin, Aurin, and many others who had served with him, each of them unleashing unrestrained killing intent from the bottom of their souls. Continue reading at Freeweb Novel. One would think this massive fosse led by 2 true titans would march toward Atlas to face warriors of the Inferno Demon Empire, but their destination was entirely different. The collapsing lightning duke saw the resolution in his warriors, and a solemn light appeared in his eyes.
When you enter the army, you do not do it for personal glory or wealth. You do it for honor and brotherhood. When you become part of my forces, you find a home and people you can call brothers. Cain Lorifer knew all that and committed his heart and soul to our forces. He fought on the front line in every single battle and never hesitated to use his own flesh and blood as a shield to protect his brothers.
At this point, the collapsing lightning duke made a small pause and felt how the killing intent of all the warriors began to rise higher and higher, to the point that a dense and cold force field began to flood the surroundings.
We all know the fate he encountered when he marched into the Prometheus sector to bring honor to his family name. There is no doubt of the machinations played against him, and how, to this day, there has not been any sign of justice. I ask you, my warriors, is that fair? Will we accept it? No. 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 No.
Not even a second after the collapsing lightning duke uttered that question, the entire army began to shout in unison with such power that it seemed their voices would shatter the sky. The collapsing lightning duke raised his hand after a few moments, making silence return before performing a solemn nod.
We will march into the Prometheus sector and take control of the Azure state. Remember, our enemy is the Azure King and the Azure royal family. We are soldiers, not animals, and we will not allow our thirst for revenge to harm innocent people. First, we will capture the entire Azure state and control its population, and only then will we impart justice on those who think they can act against the Imperial army with impunity.
A sense of order and discipline appeared in the eyes of the soldiers as they heard the words of the collapsing Lightning Duke. They were full of killing intent, but would not allow that to blind them and bring shame and dishonor to the army. A small smile appeared on the collapsing Lightning Duke's face as he saw that his forces were ready, but just as he was about to order the soldiers to get into the Star Cruisers and begin the mobilization, his eyes widened.
Are you ambitious?
The collapsing Lightning Duke felt the changes in the energy and laws first, but it did not take long for the others to realize that something was wrong as the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. For life forms with the power to level cities, an earthquake should not be something that could bother them. But the strength with which the earth began to tremble was so massive that the soldiers saw with shock how entire mountain ranges began to collapse in the distance. That was just the beginning, since soon storm clouds appeared in the sky, covering everything as far as the eyes could see, generating lightning and thunder that drew shock and fear even in the hearts of wave kings.
Thumpy.
Without warning, a massive lightning arc fell from the sky, and its target seemed to be the Imperial Lightning Fort. The first collapsing lightning pillar immediately reacted, taking out his sword and cleaving the lightning apart, generating an arc of force that carried on into the storms in the sky. That arc of force was not weaker than the one the first collapsing lightning pillar used to sunder the Blood Sea in half, yet it was not able to clear the sky, and the clouds soon regrouped. The collapsing Lightning Duke immediately activated the defenses of the Imperial Lightning Fort as he gazed at the storms, and saw the earth continue to tremble with overwhelming power. His eyes were full of confusion as he did not understand what was happening or the extent of this phenomenon. He was about to use his AI chip to communicate with other sector dukes, but messages arrived before he could, all coming from coastal sectors. The endless ocean has gone chaotic. Giant waves are destroying all the coastal cities. Hordes of wave beasts are emerging from the ocean. The collapsing Lightning Duke's eyes widened as he saw those messages and understood that the phenomenon expanded across many sectors, probably encompassing the entire continent. Maybe the entire world. Just as that thought appeared in the collapsing Lightning Duke's mind, a new wave of messages arrived, carrying even more shocking news. Forces from the Inferno demon race are crossing the demilitarized zone. We need reinforcements. Fortresses 2, 7, 14, and 25 have fallen. There are humans among their warriors. The collapsing Lightning Duke could not help but clench his fists as he felt darkness looming over the Godslayer humankind empire. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Pixie FM grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates.